Chapter 271. The Beast Master Qilin narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. It seems that I don't need to remind you. Your thoughts are indeed very clear. You know that if you win this battle, you will have to pay a heavy price. Not bad, let's fight like this. In that instant, the Beast Master Qilin had already sensed the changes in the battlefield ahead. Seeing Lin Yuan's confused face, Qilin smiled and said, "It's just an old friend's request, so I can't refuse. But friends are friends, and we have to be clear about business and personal matters. Being able to take down the 6 border cities is already a pleasant surprise. I didn't come here just to see you, the Shifter Emperor, but also to—" Kirin's eyes suddenly turned gloomy and he said coldly, "to see who is so impatient to cause trouble. After all, I'm not dead yet." The Monster Beast Imperial Court had repeatedly urged them to start a decisive battle with the humans. Was it actually not the Beast Lord Qilin's idea? Lin Yuan's eyes also became serious. He always thought that there was something wrong with the Monster King Court, but he didn't expect it to be this big. The Lord of the Inferno Beasts seemed to be hiding in the Monster King Court, and his power seemed to be quite strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to suppress the Green Swamp clan. Also, the power behind the Fire Kirin seemed to want to take control of the Hengduan Mountains. If they could send a Fire Kirin to shake Kirin's rule, then there was no way they didn't have control over the Monster King Court. Lin Yuan wasn't sure if the people urging him to fight the humans were the power behind the Fire Kirin. If they weren't together, then there would be a lot of trouble. However, this problem was a bit tricky for Kirin, but if Lin Yuan was the Beast King, then he would have a lot of power. He wouldn't be able to plant a traitor under his command. "I'll take my leave first. There's a lot of information I can get from wandering around." Kirin smiled, then he retracted his aura and slowly retreated into the shadows. After Beast Lord Kirin left, Lin Yuan let out a long sigh and turned to look in the direction of Shunning City. Previously, he was a little worried about the attitude of the King of Monsters if they really lost this war. But now, it seemed that the King of Monsters' internal problems had not been solved yet, and he still had the support of the King of Monsters, Kirin. When the King of Monsters reached out their claws to him, he would just chop them up and be done with it. When he returned to the camp, King Kong and Bai Lu immediately surrounded him with a questioning look in their eyes. "It's fine. Give the order to retreat." Lin Yuan coiled up and gave the order expressionlessly. Question marks appeared in the heads of the Beast Kings. The second batch of mystical beasts had already reached the top of the city wall. They had already begun slaughtering the human archers and destroying the city's defensive equipment. If they sent out the third batch, they would be able to easily take over the city wall. They would force the humans to engage in a street battle with them and tip the scales of victory in their favor. But now the first thing he said was to retreat. What was the meaning of this? Just F***King act? Master Black Snake, this? A Beast King licked his lips and took the initiative to take a step forward. He wanted to change Lin Yuan's decision. But what he got in response was Lin Yuan's indifferent eyes and cold words. "Anyway, I have already given the order. I don't care if you follow it or not. If you think that you can take over the city wall now, do as you please. But before you set out, you have to think clearly about what will happen to you if you back out halfway." As soon as his voice fell, the whole crowd was silent. Now, those mystical beasts who were fighting with the humans on the city wall did not listen to the Black Snake's order and forced themselves to fight with the humans. As a result, they were trapped in the enemy's camp and could only continue to charge forward. They did not even doubt that if they rushed forward and were held back by the humans, the Black Snake would not hesitate to abandon them. So even if they knew that they had an 80% chance of taking over the city wall, none of them moved. After all, those mystical beasts who were still fighting with the humans thought so too. Lin Yuan did not know whether the humans still had a trump card or not. But now, with the Beast King Kirin's order, even if Lin Yuan was acting, the mystical Beast King could not do anything to him. Or perhaps, the Beast King Kirin wanted the mystical Beast King to find trouble with Lin Yuan. When the time came, he would see how many people were adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes. The Beast King Kirin would then be able to see who was the traitor. At the same time, Shunning City Wall. The Thunder God City Lord looked at the mystical Beast King's camp that did not move for a long time. Even if the commander of these mystical beasts was really a traitor, he would not act to this extent, right? Was he not worried that the mystical Beast King would hold him responsible at all? At this moment, a huge blue eagle slowly rose from the mystical Beast King's camp. It opened its beak and cried out 3 times in a row. Only then did the city lord's face reveal a solemn expression. "It's here." The mystical beast would not let them go so easily. The blue eagle flew up to release some kind of signal. Could it be that the mystical beasts wanted to send their entire army to defeat them in one go? The Thunder God City Lord held the signal flare in his hand with a nervous expression. In order to ensure that everyone had enough rest, except for the guards of Shunning City, the guards of the other cities had a rotation system. But releasing this signal flare meant that the front line could not hold on any longer. The other city lords would have to send their subordinates to support them. Originally, they thought that they would have to hold on for at least 3 days. After 3 days, the reinforcements from the imperial capital would arrive. The mystical beasts would have no choice but to disperse. So, if they started a decisive battle at this time, they would be at a disadvantage. But after the Blue Eagle returned to the mystical Beast King's camp, there was no movement from the mystical Beast King's camp. It was as if the Blue Eagle was just released to scare them. The mystical beasts that were fighting on the city wall were at a loss at this moment. It was as if they did not believe the signal they had just received. But soon, some of the smarter mystical beasts reacted. They directly gave up on their opponents and rushed to the mystical Beast King's camp. Looking at the mystical Beast King's camp, they knew that the Black Serpent would definitely not support them. So, as long as the humans chased after them, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. At this time, the only ones who could be used to bring up the rear were their comrades who fought side by side. In this kind of meat grinder, whoever ran slower would die. Chapter 272. Night. Lin Yuan woke up the sleeping Beast Kings one by one. In this war, humans were obviously at an absolute disadvantage, so the demon beasts didn't think that humans would come and attack them. Other than some nocturnal demon beasts that were still near the camp, the rest of the demon beasts were sleeping soundly. Being suddenly disturbed from their sleep, many demon beasts immediately showed an impatient look. But when they saw the smiling Black Snake in front of them, they immediately restrained their emotions and followed Black Snake like obedient babies to wake up the next Beast King. About 15 minutes later, all the Beast Kings gathered in the center of the camp. Even their trusted subordinates followed. After all, no one knew what the Black Snake was up to in the middle of the night. Therefore, they all stared at the Black Snake with vigilance, afraid that the Black Snake would suddenly attack. Everyone, let's attack at night. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with excitement. In an instant, all the Beast Kings in the camp showed a speechless look. It could have won the battle during the day, but it did not fight, and in the middle of the night, it dragged them to attack the camp? Did this Black Snake have nothing better to do? Master Black Snake, a night attack is a good idea. After all, the humans have been fighting with us for an entire day. I guess they are all exhausted, but you have to consider our situation, right? Our main army has also been fighting a bloody battle for an entire day. Even if you are not tired, we are. A Beast King that participated in the attack on Shunning City during the day snorted twice and directly sang a different tune. Although the other Beast Kings did not express their opinions, the Beast Kings that were tricked during the day all tacitly stood behind the Beast King that took the initiative to talk back to Black Snake. Although there were not many of them who had the courage to come out and take the lead, it was not so difficult for them to express their opinions after having a leader. You don't want to go? Fine, then you don't have to go. Lin Yuan did not continue to pester them. His eyes swept across the Beast Kings' faces one by one, and a touch of ridicule flashed across his eyes. The Beast Kings were also stunned. They didn't expect the Black Serpent to be so easy to talk to at this time. The Black Serpent didn't even fly into a rage out of humiliation like they had imagined. The Black Serpent simply brushed this matter aside. Those who are willing to attack Shunning City at night, follow me. Lin Yuan looked around at the surrounding Beast Kings, then took the initiative to walk in the direction of Shunning City. Along the way, all the Beast Kings tactfully opened up a path for Lin Yuan. However, there were very few Beast Kings who gathered their subordinates to follow behind the Black Snake. Not only were humans unwilling to engage in a bloody battle with demonic beasts were the same. If it were in Demonic Beasts Forest or Hungduan Mountains, demonic beasts could easily deal with the attacks of several Beast Kings of the same level. However, near human cities, demonic beasts' mobility was greatly limited. They had almost no advantages except for their strong physique. Therefore, in the battle between demonic beasts and humans, although demonic beasts were always the stronger party, humans were the ones who won most of the time. Bailu, King Kong, and 3 or 4 Beast Kings led their subordinates and followed behind Lin Yuan, quietly approaching the direction of Shunning City. Every time they got closer to Shunning City, the movements of these demonic beasts would slow down a little, and even their breathing gradually became lighter. Only pairs of flashing cold eyes lit up in the darkness. Tonight, Shunning City was not on high alert. A group of demonic beasts came to Shunning City, but the alarm on the city wall did not sound. Master Black Snake, shall we climb the city wall now? A beast king quietly walked to Lin Yuan's side and took the initiative to ask. It did not really believe that Lin Yuan's night attack plan would succeed, but it was very clear that Lin Yuan dared to directly kill the Foxman warlord. After meeting with the Beast King's emissary, he was still safe and sound. Moreover, he was even acting more and more arrogant. This meant that this black snake must have something to rely on and was not afraid of the Beast King's emissary. If its guess was correct, in the next few decades, the Hengduan Mountains and the surrounding areas of the Xinwu dynasty would become the black snake's hunting ground. Whether it was ordinary demonic beasts or beast kings, they could only tremble in fear when they saw the black snake. Therefore, there was no harm in getting familiar with the black snake now. Even if the black snake was pretending, it did not matter. The beast king's emissary would find trouble with the black snake in the future. No, wait a little longer. Lin Yuan lay on the ground. His heterochromatic eyes shone with a strange light. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for dawn? The white deer rolled its eyes. It was more familiar with the black snake, so it naturally did not have so many scruples. But now that it thought about it, it was really a little scared. After all, under the black snake's control, almost all the beast kings had lost a lot of their men in Shunning City. Only the white deer himself had not lost many demonic beasts. Now that it followed Lin Yuan to attack Shunning City in the middle of the night, it had a bad premonition. No, wait for the main force of the humans to come out. Lin Yuan licked his lips. The strange light in his eyes shone even brighter. If it was not for his sense of smell monitoring every movement in Shunning City, he would not have thought that these humans would have the audacity to attack the demonic beast's camp tonight. However, there were only 2 regular human armies that were fighting with them today. There were still 6 human armies that had yet to be mobilized. It was not impossible for them to take advantage of the demonic beast's low morale and exhaustion to launch a surprise attack on the demonic beast's camp. The main force of the humans? Come out. King Kong was slightly startled. It looked at Lin Yuan with a strange expression. Oh my god. Those beast kings in the camp seemed to have been unknowingly tricked by the black snake again. If there were beast kings who were lucky enough to survive, wouldn't they do whatever the black snake asked them to do in the future? About 20 minutes later, the gate of Shunning City slowly opened. It was like a giant beast hibernating in the dark, quietly opening its bloody mouth full of sharp teeth and slowly approaching its prey. As the gate opened, a cavalry of 5,000 to 6,000 people slowly walked out of the gate. All of them were wearing black armor and black clothes. The hooves of the horses were wrapped in cloth, and there were copper coins in the mouths of the horses. The troop of thousands of people moved slowly without making any sound. If they had not seen them coming out, they would not have believed that this was real. Lin Yuan's heart did not waver. With a calm face he said, "Wait a little longer. The gate will not be closed. These knights will retreat after burning our camp. When they return to Shunning City, the gate will be closed. We will rush in and directly seize the gate tower. We will make sure that our escape route will not be cut off. We will give these humans a hard time." Chapter 273. Thousands of cavalrymen slowly left the perimeter of Shunning City. As planned, they divided themselves into 3 groups and surrounded the demonic beast's camp. Their movements were still uniform. They pulled out a black stick from the back of the saddle and lit it up with a match. The black stick soaked in kerosene was ignited in an instant. In an instant, the area was lit up by the fire as if it was daytime. Fire. The leader of the cavalrymen threw out the fire stick in his hand and coldly closed his helmet. Thousands of fire sticks followed closely behind, completely igniting the demonic beast's camp. Everywhere they looked, demonic beasts were running around in panic. Only a few demonic beasts were still trying their best to gather the other demonic beasts around them. Unfortunately, it was not very effective. At this time, there were too few demonic beasts that could still remain calm. After all, demonic beasts were also evolved from wild beasts. Although the bonfires that humans lit to guard against wild beasts were useless against them, when the scale of the fire reached a certain level, they would still feel fear. Just like now. Kill? The leader of the cavalrymen gave the order again. He took the lead and rushed into the demonic beast's camp. The spear in his hand instantly pierced through the bodies of 4 demonic beasts. At this moment, the protective mechanism of the spear was triggered. When the steel tip of the spear pierced through the enemy's body, the hardwood in the middle broke under the pressure. The recoil force would not be transmitted to the cavalryman. Otherwise, the recoil force would have been enough to cripple one of his hands. After the spear was broken, the cavalryman threw away the handle in his hand and pulled out a curved sword from the back of the saddle. With the help of the high speed of the horse, the cavalrymen began to clear out the demonic beasts that were approaching. One by one, the corpses of the demonic beasts fell to the ground. Blossoms of demonic blood bloomed in the air. Soon, all the demonic beasts' resistance in the camp were slaughtered by the cavalrymen. Although there were some that escaped the net and ran away when they saw that the situation was not right, there were not many of them. It was completely harmless. The cavalrymen laughed wildly. They even dragged some of the demonic beasts that were still alive behind their horses. They had been suppressed by the demonic beasts for so long. Finally they could vent their anger. "Old son, the number isn't right." A knight suddenly furrowed his brows and muttered softly. Then he muttered, "The demonic beasts here seem to be the ones that were fighting on the city walls during the day. Other than them, there are dozens of beast kings and their subordinate demonic beasts that are not here. Moreover, I heard that the demonic beasts from other places are also gathering here. Therefore, it is impossible for the demonic beast camp to only have so few demonic beasts." The rider called Old Sun was stepping on the corpse of a demonic beast. He laughed and said, "What's wrong with that? This was only one of the demonic beast camps. At most there were 7 or 8 beast kings stationed here. When the battle started, these beast kings would bring their subordinate demonic beasts together with their commanders. Then they would mobilize the demonic beasts from their respective camps. Not only is there nothing wrong with the number of demonic beasts here, it's even—" Old Sun's voice suddenly stopped. After a while, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something and directly rushed towards the demonic beast camp where the flames were rising. "The number of demonic beasts here is wrong? Of course not. During the day, the demonic beasts that fought with the Thunder Lord's army suffered heavy losses. It was absolutely impossible for there to be so many demonic beasts in this camp. The demonic beasts that they encountered now could only mean that the number of demonic beasts in this camp was much more than they had imagined. However, after a round of cleaning, they did not see many beast kings. Then where did all the demonic beasts go?" On the other side, under the leadership of Lin Yuan, the demonic beasts that participated in the night raid sneaked into Shunning City one after another. The few sentries on the city walls did not even have time to react before their throats were cut by the feathers of several flying demonic beasts. From the moment the knights left the city to the moment the demonic beasts entered the city, it was like 2 armies switching sides. In the past 10 minutes, there was not even the slightest movement from the side of Shunning City. The entire city wall was occupied by the demonic beasts. A part of the city's defense equipment was instantly destroyed. If the battle that happened during the day happened again, the side of Shunning City would definitely not be able to suppress the demonic beasts' charge with artillery. "Some of you who are quick, come with me. Let's burn the humans' granary." Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flickered in the darkness as he whispered an order to the demonic beasts beside him. In this war he had made a great concession. First, he let the members of the Association of the Demon Emperor send a batch of materials that were enough for the humans to defend. Then, in terms of strategy, he gave the humans several victories. He did not expect that the humans would still dare to go out of the city and launch a night raid on the demonic beasts' camp. If they continued to follow this train of thought, when the Xinwu dynasty sent reinforcements, wouldn't the humans directly rush out of Shunning City and drive them all the way back to the demonic beasts' forest? Since the humans were so restless, Lin Yuan naturally would not be polite. Compared to the large scale of thousands of knights, Lin Yuan's night raid was silent, but deadly enough. First he took over the city gate tower. Now the city gate facing the Hengduan Mountains was completely under Lin Yuan's control. Soon the demonic beasts in the other demonic beasts camp would realize that there was a night raid. Even without the Black Snake's order, they would not let the human knights who had left the city and entered the wilderness go. As long as Lin Yuan closed the city gate of Shunning City, the humans would not be able to escape death even if they escaped to the city walls. Although the night raid in Shunning City had killed countless knights, the source of soldiers was never a problem for the demonic beasts. Even if all the demonic beasts were killed today, the demonic beasts in the Hengduan Mountains would continue to organize a beast tide in 2 or 3 years and send the surplus demonic beasts to the humans' camp to die. Soon, a group of demonic beasts that were good at sneaking, hiding, and moving fast left their original team and followed Lin Yuan, slowly blending into the night. After all, Lin Yuan had stayed in Shunning City for several days and had the information network of the Association of the Demon Emperor. Therefore, the secret strongholds in Shunning City were no secret to Lin Yuan. Even the number of guards in the granaries, the number of hidden sentries, and the location of the sentries were all under Lin Yuan's control. After all, the other members of the Association of the Demon Emperor had left, but the branch in Shunning City still existed. Chapter 274. Shunning City, City Lord's Mansion. The city lord of Shunning City was awakened by the panicked shoving of his housekeeper. Fortunately, the city lord's temper was not bad, and the housekeeper had served him for many years, so the relationship between the two sides was very good. If it was someone with a bad temper being woken up in the middle of the night like this, it would be good if he did not kill the other party to vent his anger. Uncle Fu, what's wrong? The city lord of Shunning City sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his sleepy eyes, and asked casually. Although he looked a little lazy, but the city lord of Shunning City's heartstrings were tight. After all, Uncle Fu was an old man who had been promoted from his father's generation, and had seen many things in the world. There were not many things that could make him so panicked, and this matter must be related to Shunning City, otherwise Uncle Fu would not have woken him up in the middle of the night. Could it be? The city lord of Shunning City slowly opened his eyes. In the evening, the 7 city lords held an emergency meeting, and the general idea was that they should take advantage of the fact that the monster beasts were tired and dispirited, and organize a night attack to clear out one of the monster beasts' camps. This would not only deter these beasts, but also relieve the pressure on Shunning City. The proposal was good, but it was rejected on the spot by him, Lei Fan, and the city lord Lei Gongyan. To them, the current situation was already quite good. As long as they maintained this kind of relationship with the demonic beasts, they would be able to pass these 3 days peacefully. There was no need for them to do anything unnecessary. For example, they would offend these demonic beasts just to vent their anger. If by any chance they angered that self-proclaimed demonic emperor, this good situation would instantly collapse under the rage of the other party. Young master, the city lords have organized a group of people to attack the monster beasts' camps at night. Uncle Fu took a deep breath, and there was a touch of fear in his eyes. The city lord of Shunning City took a deep breath, and when he looked at Uncle Fu, his whole body trembled slightly. Uncle Fu was an old man in the family, and when he served the previous city lord, his father, he called him young master. Now that his father had passed away for nearly 10 years, the name Uncle Fu still did not change. It was just that the child who only looked for Uncle Fu to solve his problems had become a middle-aged man who carried the burden of the family. Who? The city lord of Shunning City heaved a heavy sigh of relief. His eyes were slightly red as he comforted him. It's okay. Tonight's night attack is 100% successful. After all, our situation here is not good. The demon beasts will never think that we would dare to leave the safety of Shunning City to attack them. It's just that the next battle won't be easy. The Shifter Emperor had given them a chance to breathe and had shown them enough kindness. If they could control their thoughts that they shouldn't have, then the unpleasant things between both sides wouldn't have happened. But now, the humans had taken the initiative to jump out of their comfort zone, which was obviously a slap to the Shifter Emperor's face. It would be fine if Shunning City had the strength to do so, but unfortunately Shunning City did not have the strength to do so. Now that he had offended the Demon the Arch, the only result was that the Demon the Arch would be enraged and would not go easy on him anymore. Theoretically speaking, the reinforcements from the imperial capital would arrive in Shunning City in 3 days. However, no one knew if there would be any accidents during this period. Moreover, the Xinwu dynasty was in a precarious situation now. It was already a good result for them to be able to defend their own territory. It was impossible for them to take the initiative to take over the war and fight against the Hengduan Mountains. He had clearly rejected their proposal, but these guys still dared to do it. Not only did they offend the Demon the Arch, but they also challenged his authority. This made him, who had a strong desire for control, very unhappy. No, it's not that. Young master, let me finish. The city lords did send people to attack the demon beasts' camp at night. I don't know how the battle went, but the demon beasts also killed their way into Shunning City in less than half an hour. I just received the news that Shunning City was completely lost, and we lost a large number of city defense equipment. Uncle Fu's voice was trembling. Even an old man like him who didn't know much about war understood how important a safe city wall was for humans. Losing these city defense equipment was like appearing naked in front of the demon beasts, and they might be bitten off at any time. Boom. It was as if a heavy bomb had exploded in his mind. After hearing the news of the demon beast's night attack, the city lord of Shunning City trembled with anger. How did the demon beasts get in? If they climbed the city wall or invaded by flying demon beasts, no matter how small the movement was, it was impossible for the sentries on the city wall not to have time to react. There was only one possibility for this to happen. These sentries thought that the night attack troops would have carried out a thorough investigation of the surrounding environment after leaving the city, so they didn't expect that there would be demon beasts nearby. Therefore they relaxed their vigilance, which gave the demon beasts a chance to take advantage of. In addition, the city gate was wide open, so the demon beasts didn't need to climb the city wall at all. They could directly walk in through the gate. As long as they were fast enough, they could kill the sentries in an instant. They could even silence the sound directly without anyone noticing. Quick! Go and inform our people to send more people to the granary immediately. After being stunned for a moment, the city lord of Shunning City was no longer thinking about who to blame, but how to minimize the loss. Now that the city was controlled by the demon beasts, not to mention the loss of city defense equipment, if the demon beasts were more ruthless and directly closed the city gate to resist the attack of the soldiers in Shunning City, the night attack troops outside would be completely wiped out. If the demon beasts took advantage of this time to burn down the granary, although they wouldn't immediately run out of ammunition and food, if something happened in the imperial capital and the reinforcement troops couldn't arrive on time, they would be in danger. Uncle Fu responded repeatedly and immediately trotted outside. The city lord of Shunning City didn't dare to stay any longer. He directly put on a coat and strode out of the room. When the governor of Shunning City walked into the courtyard, he was once again frozen in place. He looked at the slowly rising smoke in the direction of the granary and felt as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out. Bastard! Bastard is not worth my time. The city lord of Shunning City stared at the direction of the granary with blood-red eyes and roared to the sky. He knew the mentality of those city lords. After all, the scale of the demon beast tide this time was too big. It was not an existence that a city could resist. However, they didn't even have any contact with the demon beasts and directly gave up their city. Strategically speaking, it was correct, but from another point of view, it was dereliction of duty. Chapter 275. They wanted to earn some military exploits. This idea was understandable. However, this matter was not urgent. In these 3 days, according to the extent that the demon monarch went easy on them, each of them would be able to gain a considerable amount of military exploits. Although they might not be promoted, it would not be a problem for them to keep their positions and lives. However, some people were in a panic. They couldn't wait any longer and wanted to do whatever they could think of. If it weren't for what happened tonight, even if the demon beasts attacked them unilaterally, they would only be able to rush up to the city wall and kill some sentries. Moreover, they would suffer a lot of losses. This could be considered as one of the Demon King's actions of going easy on them. However, because of this stupid decision, the Demon King's night attack changed from a joking attitude to a serious one. The mayor of Shunning City naturally thought that because of the Demon King's previous actions of going easy on them, many people probably didn't take him seriously. However, in fact, those who had been on the battlefield for a long time knew that winning a battle was not easy, and losing a battle was even more of a skill. For example, Black Snake's tactical thinking was interlinked, and he could challenge the tactics according to the situation on the battlefield at any time. He could really lose this battle, or he could fake his defeat and turn the situation around. From the beginning to the end, the rhythm of the whole battle was in the hands of Black Snake. Even the mayor of Thunder Gongyen City, who was a professional soldier, felt inferior to him. The mayor of Shunning City really couldn't figure out why those city lords had the courage to underestimate Black Snake. At this time, the knights who attacked the demon beast camp at night rode their horses back. Although they had many doubts in their hearts, it didn't stop them from showing excitement on their faces. However, the people waiting for them on the city wall were not their comrades, and they didn't expect the praise they had imagined. Only pairs of sarcastic, mocking, and tyrannical eyes of the demon beasts were staring at them in the dark. Under the horrified eyes of the knights, the city gate of Shunning City closed little by little, directly separating the knights who attacked at night from the safety of the city. It was like two completely different worlds. The knight surnamed Sun frowned and rushed to the city gate. He knocked on the gate with the hilt of his sword and growled, "What are you doing? The demon beasts behind are about to catch up. Hurry up and open the gate. Let us in." What responded to the knight surnamed Sun was not a greeting from his fellow soldiers, nor was it the slowly opening city gate. Instead, it was a huge rock that was pushed down from the city wall by a rhinoceros demon beast. The knight surnamed Sun, who was caught off guard, did not even have the time to dodge before he was smashed into a pile of meat paste along with his horse. "This road is blocked, you little human bastards." The rhinoceros demon beast stepped on the city wall with one foot. Its eyes flashed with excitement as it laughed. The rhinoceros was also a beast king, but it was not as smart as the other beast kings. It did not plan anything. It simply felt that as a subordinate, it should obey the orders of its commander. That was why it followed the Black Snake and participated in the night attack against Shunning City. Originally, the rhinoceros was worried that the Black Serpent would continue to act like before, but now it seemed that the Black Serpent was really angry. Not only was there no mistake in his command, but on the contrary, every step of the operation was clearly planned by him. The entire night raid was also interlocked, leaving no chance for these humans to react. Demonic beast? Demon beast. How could demon beasts be in Shunning City? In an instant, a huge question mark appeared on top of all the knights' heads. But to be honest, after a group of demon beasts occupied the city gate, it was tantamount to sentencing them to death. Even if the troops in Shunning City could quickly clean up these demon beasts, the beast tied behind them would also put enough pressure on the human side. At this time, no one would be brave enough to open the city gate for these warriors who participated in the night raid. Otherwise, if the demon beasts outside rushed in, none of them would be able to escape. The knights who had been in high spirits a moment ago were now as listless as cripples who had been hit by frost. A strong sense of despair began to spread among the night raid troops. The demon beasts from other demon beasts camps also slowly arrived at the battlefield. When they saw the closed gate of Shunning City and the demon beasts standing on the city wall, they immediately became excited. Their commander had obviously begun to exert his strength. He swept away the decline during the day and took down the city wall directly in one round. Even the knights on the human side who could fight against the demon beasts were pushed into a desperate situation. In the face of absolute numbers, these thousands of carefully selected elite knights were of no use at all. It was like facing an overwhelming flood. A cluster of bonfire could only be extinguished in an instant. About half an hour later, the 7 city lords led their own troops to the city gate slowly. Pairs of eyes fell on Lin Yuan, but Lin Yuan could not see any hatred from these eyes, only fear and regret. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he only felt a sense of boredom. Although these humans gathered here, in fact, they did not have much fighting spirit. They did not even want to fight against the demon beasts. Black Snake, we were wrong. The city lord of Shunning City swallowed a mouthful of saliva and took the initiative to walk out of the crowd. His deep black eyes were very dim at this moment, like the stars that were about to fall. Although this matter was not his responsibility from the beginning to the end, the problem was, after all, his fault. If he had maintained his vigilance and continued to rest in the city gate tower, this night raid troop would never have left Shunning City. In that case, Black Snake would not have directly killed his way into Shunning City and forced them into a situation where they could not back down. Lin Yuan opened his mouth and showed a sarcastic smile. He said in a cold voice, "I just wanted to say hello to you, but you gave me a big surprise. Human, I can see that your status is not low. I will give you a chance. Tell me, how do you want to solve this matter?" He kindly gave these humans a chance to live, but they did not cherish it at all. They even planned to directly slap him in the face at night. If this matter was exposed like this, even if Lin Yuan could bear it, the Beast Master Kirin's evaluation of him would be greatly reduced. He might even be included in the ranks of the demon beasts who were friendly to humans. When the Beast Master Kirin chose the true successor, he could just wait for death. Therefore these humans must pay the price. And they must pay a very painful price. The city lord of Shunning City looked resentful and did not know how to respond. Chapter 276. What was the scariest thing about bargaining? It was not asking for a sky-high price, nor was it asking for money on the ground. It was when your opponent had the absolute advantage and directly kicked the ball to you. If you gave too much, it would make you look stupid and the price would be more painful. If you gave too little and the other party did not agree, you could only stare at them helplessly. Hiss, who? The city lord of Shunning City took a deep breath, and his eyes showed a touch of determination. He said in a deep voice, "Black Snake, your name is well known in the area around the Hengduan Mountains. I think you, as the Beast King of the Stoneclaw Forest, should know about the verbal contract signed between the city lord of Jianghu City and the Three-Eyed Ape. Today, I am willing to represent all the city lords of the 7 border cities and the Demon Slayer Association to sign a similar contract with you." What? Impossible. Are you crazy? When the city lord of Shunning City finished speaking, the other city lords suddenly shouted. Only Lei Fan and the city lord with the Thunder Lord's face did not express their opinions, and just watched everything in front of them coldly. Now, even if the Xinwu dynasty survived, it would be in a state of great loss. In a short time, it would not be able to transfer extra forces into the Hengduan Mountains to hunt. Therefore, signing this contract would not cause any substantial loss to the human race. However, if they could protect Shunning City, it would be a great achievement. The city lord of Zhongshan City had a miserable end because the demonic beasts had swept through the city, and it did not have a big impact on the Shenwu dynasty. However, the contract signed by the city lord of Zhongshan City affected the income of the entire Shenwu dynasty. However, these were two different things. Zhongshan City was gone, so be it. However, if Shunning City was gone, it meant that the hinterland of the human race was completely exposed to the Hengduan Mountains. The demonic beast's area of activity would no longer be limited to that small area in the demonic beast forest. Therefore, if they could not protect Shunning City at this time, they would have a miserable end. When the Shenwu dynasty recovered and had enough strength, would the so-called contract still be effective? Could it be that the Monster Beast Palace would use this as an excuse to attack the Shenwu dynasty? Not to mention the 7 empires that were at the peak of their power, even the disciples of some sects didn't put the demonic beasts in their eyes. In their eyes, the development of this world had become abnormal. Humans didn't even treat the demonic beasts as another intelligent race. In their eyes, the demonic beasts were just spiritual herbs that could make them stronger. Without waiting for Lin Yuan's reply, the Shunning City Lord's gaze turned cold. His eyes fell directly on the clamoring city lords, and his voice became as cold as ice. Then let's change the way we deal with it. Let's catch the masterminds behind tonight's attack on the demonic beast's camp, peel off their skin, pull out their tendons, and hang them on the top of Shunning City under the sun to vent their anger for the demonic beasts. How about that? The 7 border cities were considered to be borderlands. People with backgrounds wouldn't come to this kind of place to make a living. Therefore, even these city lords couldn't be considered as talents. There were only a few that could be brought out. For example, in his opinion, Lei Fan, who was originally here to make a name for himself, could more or less be considered as a talent. It was just that he was too close to the demonic beast. If this continued, Lei Fan would be tied together with the Black Snake and the Demon Emperor. Although it was enough to support Lei Fan to run amok in the northern frontier, before his power accumulated to a certain extent, this kind of behavior would undoubtedly be criticized and even suppressed by some factions that hated the demonic beasts. As for the city lord Lei Gong, he was a grassroots who rose from nothing. Although he had a certain amount of ability, his character was too irritable. Many times, without the guidance of someone with foresight, it was easy for him to play himself to death. If these useless people were abandoned, they could fool the demonic beasts, and the city lord of Shunning City would immediately pick up the butcher's knife and kill them. Lin Yuan coiled his snake body and came in front of the city lord of Shunning City. A pair of different colored vertical pupils looked at the city lord of Shunning City, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He lowered his voice and said slowly, "Look at me, do I look like a fool? To be honest, I did give you a chance, didn't I? Why can't you just obediently muddle through these few days? Since you don't want to be obedient, then I don't need to give you any more face, right?" Lin Yuan's words made the city lord of Shunning City's expression stagnate, and his eyes revealed a bit of fear. Although he didn't know why, he could feel that the Black Snake was extremely angry at this moment. When he stood face to face with the Black Snake, he was worried that the Black Snake would attack him at any time and bite his head off. "I have a proposal. You can choose to accept it or you can choose to kill all of you and then I will carry it out myself." Lin Yuan's voice once again rang in the ears of the city lord of Shunning City. He said in a cold voice, "I can guarantee that Shunning City will continue to exist, but in my opinion, these 2 city walls are not necessary to exist. Anyway, the periphery of the Hengduan Mountains near the Shenwu dynasty will soon be ruled by me. As long as you don't provoke me, I won't bother to deal with you." The Black Snake's proposal made the city lord of Shunning City break out in a cold sweat. As the most impregnable pass in the northern frontier of the Shenwu dynasty, Shunning City directly blocked many evil beasts in the Hengduan Mountains, which showed its importance. If the 2 city walls were lost as a barrier, the evil beasts could break through the defense line of Shunning City at any time and go straight to the hinterland of the Shenwu dynasty. Then, whether Shunning City still existed or not would be meaningless. But as the Black Snake said, it was just a proposal. No matter whether the city lord of Shunning City agreed or not, the result would not change. After these evil beasts killed all of them, they could destroy the city walls at any time. Since the night raid left Shunning City tonight, their fate seemed to have been nailed to death by the Black Snake. Should they choose to surrender to an evil beast and continue to live, or should they choose to be a martyr for the Shenwu dynasty? After thinking for a moment, the city lord of Shunning City knelt down in front of Lin Yuan on one knee and said loudly, Subordinate Hu Yan pays respect to Demon Emperor. I'm willing to go through water and tread on fire for Demon Emperor. Hu Yan's kneeling instantly meant that there was a new faction in the Shenwu dynasty. It was a force made up of defeated people, criminals, demi-humans and evil beasts. Although it couldn't be compared with the aristocratic families in the south, in the northern frontier, the Demon Emperor Association would become the biggest, only, and unquestionable voice. The remaining members of the Jiao clan who had been playing tricks in the dark would soon be dug out and cleaned up one by the intelligence network of the Demon Emperor Association. Seeing that the other city lords also knelt down, Lin Yuan nodded with satisfaction. This war was already over. Chapter 277. The Shenwu Dynasty, Imperial Capital. All the civil and military officials were gathered in one place, looking at the man sitting on the dragon throne. They all looked like they wanted to say something, but no one dared to speak at this time, afraid that they would offend this person. The Shenwu dynasty was not very stable internally. In the early days, the disciples of the old officials of the Wanjian dynasty were part of a faction. Although Lei Qiuxing wanted to get rid of them, these people did not give Lei Qiuxing any excuse. In addition, the power of this faction was spread throughout the various cities of the Shenwu dynasty. Therefore, even though Lei Qiuxing had been looking for an opportunity, he had not been able to make a move. Otherwise, the entire Shenwu dynasty would have fallen into chaos. Now, the faction of the old officials from the previous dynasty had not been dealt with yet, and a new faction had appeared on the northern frontier. With the garrison of the northern frontier and the various city lords as their base, supported by demonic beasts, criminals and demi-humans, this faction was even more annoying in human society, but at the same time, their power was even more terrifying. If getting rid of the old officials from the previous dynasty would only cause the Shenwu dynasty to fall into chaos, then getting rid of the new faction on the northern frontier would be a direct rebellion. Most importantly, the leader of this new faction was a descendant of the Lei family. Zhang Xiu, have you investigated the matter that I asked you to? Lei Qiuxing, who was sitting on the dragon throne, slowly raised his head as a cold glint flashed across his deep eyes. I've investigated it. The one working with young Master Lei Fan is a black snake. Before this year there had never been any news about this black snake, but since the second half of this year the rumors about the black snake have never stopped. It is said that this black snake went from a wild beast to the 10th level of the Spirit Awakening realm in just a few short months, and now to the 10th level of the Wisdom realm in less than a year. In terms of talent, the black snake is definitely at the top. The members of the Embroidered Uniform Guard have already secretly investigated the black snake, but they did not find any ancient bloodline in the black snake. It could even be said that the black snake does not have any bloodline at all. However, during this period of time, we have conducted a further investigation and found that the black snake has the bloodline of a demonic beast from the dragon race. Moreover, it is very pure, similar to the offspring of a pure-blooded demonic beast. In addition, putting aside the black snake's personal problems, there are many things about the black snake that we should be wary of. The black snake seems to know how to use troops even more than the generals of the Shenwu dynasty's border generals, and is very accurate in guessing people's hearts. In terms of intelligence and strategy, the Black Serpent was an existence that stood at the top of the pyramid in human society. There is also the association of the demonic emperors that the Black Snake created, which is an even more mysterious organization. Our Embroidered Uniform Guard once tried to recruit some criminals and demi-humans to serve as low-level members. First of all, these people's battle strength is not bad, and their fighting style is quite fierce and fearless. They are very qualified soldiers. However, with their backgrounds, it is destined that they will not be able to reach the clouds smoothly. This is one thing. The other thing is that almost all of these people are golden hounds. As long as they can bring them enough benefits, there is nothing they cannot sell. In fact, if the benefits are enticing enough, they will even sell themselves out. Thus, these people do not have much loyalty to speak of. Moreover, their style of doing things is crude and barbaric, and the slightest bit of friction can easily lead to trouble. Our Embroidered Uniform Guard's training program for these criminals and demi-humans ended in failure. However, when these people are gathered in the association of the demonic emperors, they are like a high-quality and powerful elite force. Not only are their execution abilities strong, but they can also execute orders without fail. This method of training subordinates is quite terrifying. Zhang Xiu slowly walked out from the civil and military officials and told them all he knew about the Black Snake. Finally, Zhang Xiu cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, "Finally, I would like to add one more thing. Many people believe that the Black Snake is the demonic emperors, but I personally do not agree with this view. In my opinion, the Black Snake is more like a puppet of the demonic emperors, a smokescreen thrown out in the open. Even the Black Snake's strength and bloodline were personally bestowed by the demonic emperors. Lei Qiuxing's fingertips lightly tapped on the dragon throne's armrest. His deep black eyes flashed with a cold light. According to the information Zhang Xiu had obtained, this Black Snake was definitely a rare talent. Even in the Xinwu dynasty, it could definitely be called a Kirin talent. No matter what position was given to the Black Snake, it could perfectly perform it to the best of its ability. However, this was where the problem came from. If such a terrifying demonic beast existed in the world, if it was not eliminated as soon as possible, it would sooner or later grow into a great threat to humanity. Lei Qiuxing's eyes turned and landed on Zhang Xiu with a gaze that made people not dare to look at him directly. He frowned and said, "Why do you evaluate the Black Snake like this?" The Black Snake's talent and aptitude were all first-class existences. If such an existence could be treated as a puppet and a smokescreen by the Shifter Emperor, then how terrifying would the Shifter Emperor hidden in the dark be? It's very simple. It's because I feel that many of the things the Black Snake has done are actually under the orders of the Shifter Emperor. However, from some of the small actions of the Black Snake, I can see that the Black Snake's intelligence is actually not that high. For example, its current network in the Hengduan mountain range is almost zero. Almost all the demonic beasts that have encountered it in the Hengduan mountain range have been offended by it at least once. There's also the Yuanyang siblings that were previously listed as dangerous demonic beasts by the Demon Slayer Association. They originally helped the Black Snake deal with the Red Flame Crocodile King. After the matter was settled, the siblings disappeared without a trace, while the Black Snake's strength increased by another wave. Therefore, I'm guessing that the Yuanyang siblings might have been devoured by the Black Snake. Such a demonic beast that doesn't have any emotional intelligence or foresight and only cares about the laughable benefits in front of it would definitely not form an organization like the Association of the Shifter Emperor. It's even more impossible for it to suppress our generals at the northern frontier. Therefore, the only explanation is that some of the Black Snake's actions are not of its own volition. It is only strictly following the orders that the Shifter Emperor conveyed to it. Zhang Xiu's eyes flickered. He combined the information he had obtained and made a reasonable analysis. The Black Snake's every move was indeed full of contradictions in their eyes. Sometimes, it was so scheming that it was enough to make people feel afraid. However, when it did things, it was more like a brainless single-celled organism. However, strictly speaking, there really was a Shifter Emperor behind Lin Yuan. That was the system. Some of the rewards that Lin Yuan had given out, apart from the phase produced in the Hengduan mountain range, were all derivatives of a certain function of the system. For example, the physique training technique that shocked the world was the golden body art that he had obtained when he opened the system gift pack. Chapter 278. Lei Qiuxing narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, "If you put it this way, it's really interesting. In short, this demon emperor is a huge threat to the entire human race. If we can get rid of it, we must do so as soon as possible. Stop all the work at hand during this period of time. The embroidered uniform guards will do their best to track this Black Snake and see if we can find out who the demon emperor behind it is." Lei Qiuxing's words shocked all the officials and generals in the imperial court. Compared to the officials of the previous dynasty, this divine martial emperor could not tolerate the addition of a force mainly made up of demonic beasts in his faction. He also could not tolerate a terrifying existence that could lead the demonic beasts to dominate the human race to continue to be active around the Xinwu dynasty. This subordinate accepts the order. Zhang Xiu cupped his fists and replied. His eyes flashed with excitement. He had been doing some things before Lei Qiuxing's order. He had even combed through the Black Snake's network but did not find anyone who could be the demon emperor. However, in the face of such a conclusion, Zhang Xiu did not despair. Instead, he was even more interested in unearthing the real demon emperor. He was too lazy to do things that were not challenging. Su Wu. Lei Qiuxing's voice sounded again. This general is here. A tall and sturdy man who looked like an iron tower walked out from the ranks of the generals. Lei Qiuxing sat on the dragon throne and looked up slightly. It was as if his gaze had penetrated the endless void and landed on the northern frontier. His deep voice sounded slowly. From now on, the Xiongwu army will withdraw from the South Sea battlefield. Along the way, gather the scattered troops and integrate the demon-subduing masters and the mercenaries. You must gather 1,000,000 troops and rush to the northern frontier battlefield within half a month. Be prepared to fight with the northern frontier and take back the territory that belongs to us humans. This general obeys. Su Wu cupped his fists. A hint of bitterness flashed across his resolute face. Although he had already guessed that the divine martial emperor was going to fight with the northern frontier and wanted to drive the demonic beasts, criminals, and demi-humans out of the Jianghu dynasty's territory, he did not expect this order to be issued so quickly. He also did not expect this difficult task to fall on his shoulders. If the Black Snake was so easy to deal with, the northern frontier would not have changed hands. Let's not talk about the divine martial emperor's actions against the Black Snake. At this moment, the northern frontier was bustling with activity. Almost all adult men working hard to dismantle the city's buildings. Even the city walls that were used to defend against the invaders did not escape. Even the city walls that were used to resist the invaders' city walls could not escape. Although the 7 cities still maintained their basic structure, they had completely lost the qualifications to challenge Mountain Range's city. In addition, the original 7-city garrison legions had been completely disbanded. With the original elite soldiers and generals as the backbone, a new Northern Frontier Guard Legion was formed. Although a large number of new soldiers had been recruited and their combat power was far inferior to the previous 7-city coalition, the size and cohesion of the legion were already different from before. While these humans were working hard for Lin Yuan, the income was also quite terrifying. If a mercenary wanted to quit this profession, it would take at least 5 to 8 years to save enough money for the rest of his life. However, this amount of money was almost nothing to Lin Yuan. Even the most ordinary worker could easily earn a sum of money that was not less than the mercenary's pension after working for a year. It could not be helped. Lin Yuan now had the words rich and overbearing written on his face. As an existence who had transmigrated from the era of information explosion to this ancient world, Lin Yuan was very clear that any business in this world was profitable. The reason why there were losses and profits was because the problem of personal ability and background was an extremely difficult hurdle to cross. However, no matter what business it was, as long as one could achieve a monopoly, it would definitely be profitable. Coincidentally, Lin Yuan had almost achieved the condition of a monopoly. If humans wanted to speed up their cultivation, they had to have demonic beast flesh or phase. Although these two things could not be said to be the specialty of the Hengduan Mountain Range, 80% of the goods came from the Hengduan Mountain Range. Now, Lin Yuan not only controlled the periphery of the Hengduan Mountain Range that was adjacent to the Jianghu dynasty, but he also controlled the background of the Jianghu dynasty. Apart from passing through Shunning City, which had been demolished, there was no other way to sell demonic beast flesh and phase from the Hengduan Mountain Range to the Jianghu dynasty's territory. Of course, it was not impossible to purchase from other empires. However, the neighboring Qinjiang Empire and Shuangjin Empire were still in a state of war with the Jianghu dynasty. If the caravans wanted to pass through the battlefield to enter the enemy's territory, then purchase enough phase before returning, the danger would be much higher than directly crossing the Hengduan Mountain Range. To put it bluntly, war was originally burning money. Even if the enemy's resources were enough to support the war, who would be stupid enough to reject a group of free takeaways? As a result, all the caravans gathered in Shunning City and waited for the Demon Emperor Association's members to transport the limited amount of phase to Shunning City's warehouse to be auctioned. Lin Yuan was very clear that his business was close to a monopoly. All the phase had to have a frightening base price. Then, the various large merchant associations and idle merchants in the warehouse would bid to raise the price. The speed of earning money was much faster than directly robbing. As for the merchants working together to suppress the price? Sorry, but whether there would be more stock next time would depend on Lin Yuan's mood. Moreover, if Lin Yuan could raise the price, the merchants who made a living doing this were even more proficient in this field. Especially when the other merchant associations ran out of stock, the price that they could sell their stock for would make Lin Yuan feel inferior. In just half a month, the wealth that Lin Yuan's Demon Emperor Association had absorbed had even surpassed the total income of the Jianghu dynasty in the past 5 years. Naturally, this money was not idle in Lin Yuan's hands. After all, to him, although there were countless dangers in the Hengduan Mountain Range, it was still much more convenient than humans. Therefore, large amounts of phase, herbs, weapons and equipment, and even some technologies that were secretly leaked from some dynasties were slowly piling up in the northern frontier. Although the current northern frontier still belonged to the Jianghu dynasty, everyone could see that the northern frontier was equivalent to an independent dynasty. They completely listened to the Emperor God's orders and did not listen to them. Many aristocratic families had even secretly facilitated a lot, hoping to get a share of Lin Yuan's business. However, the heat of the past half a month had completely dissipated today. The entire northern frontier was filled with the atmosphere of a coming storm. The streets of Shunning City were filled with an oppressive atmosphere. Pairs of eyes looked uneasily at the approaching military flag. Chapter 279. The Xiongwujuan. An elite force that had been passed down for 100 years. This force was initially established as a cavalry unit. Now, it had become an organized army. In addition, the Xinwu dynasty had been constantly recruiting defeated troops from various battlefields into the Xiongwujuan. At the same time, they had also spent a large amount of money to hire a considerable number of demon-subduing masters and mercenaries to participate in the war. This army that was approaching the northern frontier had already reached 3 million people. It had even exceeded Su Wu's expectations. Facing such a terrifying human army, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a hint of gloominess. The Xinwu dynasty was already in a precarious situation. Although the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had stopped their invasion, the Azure River and Frost Mirror empires had already invested a lot of resources. It was naturally impossible for them to make peace without getting any benefits. Therefore, the war on the two fronts was still very tense. With the Xinwu dynasty's current resources, it was not difficult to support an army of 3 million people. However, it was still not a small burden. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not expect the Xiongwujuan to have a good talk with him. The fact that the other party did not directly charge at the moment of contact and allowed Lin Yuan to move the civilians to the rear was already the greatest kindness. After all, when the civilians left, Lin Yuan's scattered troops would also begin to gather here. The next day, early morning, the flag of the Xiongwujuan fluttered 100 li away. Lin Yuan coiled his snake body in the camp. His eyes flashed with a hint of gloominess. The demonic beasts, demi-humans, Association of the Demonic Emperor, and the Northern Frontier Guard Corps were all present. However, compared to the other party, their numbers were not even a third. Faction Battle Model. Name, Northern Frontier Defense Battle, in battle, attacking side. Xinwu Dynasty, Xiongwujuan, weak, defending side. Association of the Demonic Emperor, Blackwater Dragon Palace, Northern Frontier Guard Corps, weak, evaluation. The evaluation of your factions is the same, but that is based on the average of all the factions in the Tianwu continent. Therefore, you have to know who is stronger and who is weaker. After all, I don't want to be a gardener who plants trees in your heart. If the host obtains victory in this battle, the host will be rewarded with 5,000 war points. If the host loses in this battle, the host will have to pay 5,000 war points. Note, the scale of the war is large. The system may issue war missions at any time. Please be aware. Glancing at the faction battle model, Lin Yuan's expression turned gloomy. For a moment, Lin Yuan even wanted to give up on the northern frontier. However, after careful consideration, he realized that he had spent almost all his war points during this period of development. He simply could not afford to pay the penalty for failure. And the price of deducting attribute points was equivalent to directly beating Lin Yuan back to the ground. If the system were to deduct, 10 war points would be equivalent to 1 attribute point. 5,000 war points would be equivalent to 500 attribute points. As a level 10 intelligent perception demonic beast, including the free attribute points, Lin Yuan's current total attribute points were only 830 attribute points. He had reached the threshold of the intelligent perception demonic beast. Black Snake, it seems that the Xinwu dynasty is serious this time. Bai Lu lazily laid down beside Lin Yuan, a hint of disdain in its eyes. It was different from Lin Yuan. The war between humans and demonic beasts had lasted for so many years. Both sides had countless experts, so anyone could die on the battlefield. However, once it left the battlefield, these humans would not be able to find it in the Hengduan Mountains no matter how powerful they were. Therefore, Bai Lu did not have any obsession with the outcome of this battle. It did not even care about it at all. At most, it would just hide back in the Hengduan Mountains. As if I'm not serious. A cold glint flashed across Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. In the past half a month, he had entered the stage of transforming into a flood dragon. In the system's way, the progress bar of Lin Yuan's transformation into a flood dragon had reached 45%, and his free attribute points could still be improved. Lin Yuan guessed two things at the same time from these actions of the system. Firstly, this flood dragon transformation progress bar might last for quite a long time. After all, Lin Yuan had spent less than a year to progress from a beast-level black snake to a beast king in the outer regions of the Hengduan Mountains. Now, a bloodline advancement would take more than a month. It was indeed a very long time. Furthermore, with Lin Yuan's understanding of this damned system, this dog might even give him a mission when the progress was at 99% or 98%. Secondly, Lin Yuan now had 280 free attribute points on hand. Although he couldn't add them to his body, it was enough for him to level up 4 times in a row in the Wisdom realm. However, in the Mountain Lord realm, these 280 free attribute points didn't even have the qualifications to level up 1 level. Whether it was in the Hengduan Mountains or in the human world. The 2 words Black Snake meant a warmonger. This did not mean that Lin Yuan liked to fight. On the contrary, he preferred to be a salted fish. It was just that the aptitude of this body was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. According to his own cultivation method, even if he stayed near the green leaf water lotus, Lin Yuan felt that he might not be able to break through 1 level even if he cultivated in seclusion for 100 years. Therefore, if he wanted to grow, he could only choose to kill other living beings to obtain free attribute points. Therefore, although Lin Yuan did not like war, he did not reject it. Xiong Wujuan's army of 3 million might be an invincible army in the eyes of others, but in Lin Yuan's eyes, they could be called walking free attribute points. If he could kill them all, no, kill 1/3 of them. Lin Yuan expressed that it did not matter even if he lost this war. He did not believe that over 1 million humans could not even give him 500 free attribute points. Then, let's fight. Bai Lu's lazy posture was swept away. He stood up directly from the ground, his body emitting a colorful glow. Ding. Host has been strengthened, attack power increased by 5%. Ding. Host has been strengthened, defense power increased by 5%. Ding. Host has been strengthened, speed increased by 5%. Ding. Host has been strengthened, courage increased. Ding. Host has been strengthened, demonic power increased. A series of system notifications rang in his mind. In an instant, Lin Yuan's free attribute points increased by a lot. Bai Lu was different from Lin Yuan, who was alone. He was born in the 9-colored deer clan. Even if it was only a branch, he was still a member of a large clan. Therefore, when Bai Lu came to support Lin Yuan this time, he also brought a large number of members of the Trampling Mist clan over and directly gave all kinds of buffs to everyone. Chapter 280. However, Lin Yuan looked at the refresh status buff prompt, and the corner of his eyes twitched slightly. Although the number of creatures buffed had indeed increased, and there were a few more Bai Lu who had not buffed him before, Lin Yuan felt that Bai Lu did not seem to have improved at all. The group status buff still maintained a 5% increase. If that was the case, Bai Lu might as well be pulled out from the large group and buffed him alone. Only one buff can exist on a creature. The weaker buff will be offset by the stronger buff. Also, the difference in strength between us is too great. If I buff you alone, it might not be as good as a group buff with fixed effects. Bai Lu smiled at Lin Yuan and took the initiative to explain, as if he had seen through Lin Yuan's thoughts. At the front of the group was a group of thick-skinned wisdom state monsters. There was no lack of mountain-shaking apes among them. After all, with a beast king like Lin Yuan overseeing the Stoneclaw Forest, the monsters were extremely fortunate. They didn't need to rely on luck to find phase. As long as they contributed enough to the Stoneclaw Forest, they could exchange for phase they needed from Nachin. If there weren't any in the warehouse, Lin Yuan would also contact the caravans from the northern frontier to cross the Hengduan mountain range to purchase phase from other dynasties. As for why the monsters in the Hengduan mountain range were so cooperative, first, Lin Yuan had become the uncrowned king of the Stoneclaw Forest. Even among the monsters under Subaru's command, Lin Yuan was one of the more outstanding ones. Therefore, if they wanted to touch Lin Yuan now, they would need Subaru's permission. Even if this great beast king didn't care about trivial matters like territory and subordinates, it was undeniable that Subaru was the most prideful among the 3 great beast kings. Second, Lin Yuan's caravans crossing the Hengduan mountain range could not only generate huge profits for Lin Yuan, but they could also circulate the phase in the entire Hengduan mountain range. From one end of the Hengduan mountain range to the other, different monsters' needs could be satisfied. It could be said that it was the result of a happy family. It wasn't that there weren't human merchants who wanted to do something similar, but they didn't have an existence like the black serpent above them. Therefore, the monsters naturally didn't treat them as allies. Once they stepped into the monsters' territory, they would only be attacked by countless monsters. Third, the current Lin Yuan could be said to be a great hero of the Hengduan mountain range, or even the Monster Beast clan. After all, pushing the monsters' territory out of the Monster Beast forest was something that many monsters didn't even dare to think about. Now, Lin Yuan had directly conquered the 7 border cities of the Jianghu dynasty and became the hidden controller behind the scenes. Not to mention the current tense situation, the other 6 great empires wouldn't find trouble with Lin Yuan. Even if the 7 great empires were restored to their peak, the humans had no excuse to find trouble with Lin Yuan. After all, the current northern frontier was under the control of the humans. Lin Yuan wasn't the first person to do this kind of thing. Just like the Fire Kirin and the forces behind it, humans really didn't lack in wanting their tamed monsters to enter the wild monsters' territory and then occupy a certain territory. They even wanted to obtain the right to speak in the entire Hengduan mountain range. Similarly, even if the Monster Beast Palace knew about it, they could only swallow their anger. After all, those territories were still under the control of the monsters. Therefore, regardless of whether it was for the sake of fame or profit, Lin Yuan now had a death-free gold medal hanging on his body. It could even be said that a group of beast kings in the Hengduan mountains were looking forward to cooperating with Lin Yuan as if they were looking forward to the stars and the moon. Even Master, who was previously determined to obtain Lin Yuan and did not even hesitate to offend the Fire Qilin, gave up at this moment and did not dare to trouble Lin Yuan again. In short, the current Lin Yuan had already entered the eyes of the higher-ups of the Monster Beast Palace. Once they forced Lin Yuan into a corner, Lin Yuan would say something bad. Even if these purgatory monsters in disguise weren't completely wiped out, there probably wouldn't be many left. Charge. In the blink of an eye, the monsters in front of them had already formed a formation and were eagerly staring at Xiong Wujuan's camp. The northern frontier had removed the city walls because the existence of the city walls limited the monsters' abilities. Under Lin Yuan's control of the northern frontier, even if there was an external invasion, the monsters in the Hengduan mountain range would be able to rush over to provide support. It could be said that the monsters were the city walls of the northern frontier. If they wanted to invade the northern frontier, they would have to step over the corpses of the monsters first. Following Lin Yuan's order, the monsters in front of them roared and rushed towards Xiong Wujuan's camp. Facing an enemy that was 4 to 5 times their number, these monsters didn't have the slightest fear in their eyes. Instead, they were completely excited. The huge disparity in combat strength between the monsters and humans below the Heaven Strength realm was the reason why Lin Yuan was determined to fight this war. After all, it wasn't that he had no chance of winning. On the contrary, under such circumstances, Lin Yuan's chances of winning this war were quite high. Xiong Wujuan's side was no pushover either. Although the composition of the troops was complicated, with scattered troops, mercenaries and monster slayers mixed in with the original members of Xiong Wujuan's army, even a veteran general like Su Wu couldn't control them. However, they were still an army that the Jianghu dynasty had spent a lot of money to build. Facing the first wave of monsters' charge, Xiong Wujuan's army didn't seem to be afraid at all. They even took the initiative to open the gate of the camp and charge towards the monsters. However, Xiong Wujuan dared to do so because he had the confidence to do so. A single soldier's equipment weighed 3,500 pounds. If an airborne realm human wanted to charge and fight while wearing such heavy equipment, they would have to circulate spiritual qi throughout their body without the slightest bit of slack. Otherwise, they could be crushed to death by their own equipment. In the formation of the Northern Frontier Guard Corps, the city lord, who was born in the Jianghu dynasty's army, twitched the corner of his mouth. He had heard about Xiong Wujuan's army when he was recruiting people along the way. This was an army that was built with money. At first, he thought that this army was just recruiting mercenaries and monster slayers with a lot of money. However, after facing this army personally, he suddenly realized that the equipment of Xiong Wujuan's army was at least 2 levels higher than that of other armies of the same level. If the Jianghu dynasty were to have a civil war, perhaps only Xin Lin Jun, who had an average of 3,500 pounds of armor, would have been able to single-handedly crush this army. Otherwise, no other army would have been able to deal with this kind of hooligan tactics that directly pushed the front line. After all, they dared to directly charge at the monsters. One could only imagine how much confidence they had. Note that this wasn't a defensive formation, it was a countercharge. This meant that the commander of this army felt that his subordinates had at least a 60% chance of breaking through the monsters' front line. Chapter 281. In fact, the battle situation was indeed as such. In the first 6 minutes, the demon beasts were almost directly pressed to the ground. The ones at the front were almost all thick-skinned creatures like rhinoceroses and forest elephants. Although their attack might be a little weaker, their defense was definitely top-notch. If their confrontation was described as a battle between 2 humans, then Lin Yuan's side would raise his hand and use a shield attack. However, under such a tactic, Lin Yuan discovered that the demon beasts were actually unable to break through these heavy armor warriors at all. Although the momentum of these humans' charge was stopped, the demon beast's side was knocked over. There were even some demon beasts that were directly separated from the front line, crashing into the second line that was similar to the mountain-shaking apes, swamp crocodiles, hypertoxic lizards, and so on. Although their defense was not as good as the first line, their strength was not weak at all, and they could cause huge damage to the humans. If Lin Yuan had not long anticipated this scene and pulled apart the distance between the two sides, the formation would have been completely disrupted by the other side. Fortunately, although this moment was out of Lin Yuan's expectations, it only caused a little chaos. Standing on the observation platform of the temporary camp watching the battle, Su Wu coldly snorted and said expressionlessly, "This black snake is quite cautious. But that's good, this is just the beginning. If you were to be killed so easily, then wouldn't I have been on tenterhooks all the way here for nothing?" For a veteran like Su Wu, once the demon beast formation was broken, then it would not be as simple as just a group of heavy armor warriors leaving the camp. It was even possible that the entire army would charge out and directly swallow the team in front of them. That would be no different from breaking the sharpest tooth in the black snake's mouth. Stall for time, do as much vigorous exercise as possible. Lin Yuan unusually calmly gave the second order. Through the method of telepathy communication, Lin Yuan could easily command every one of his subordinates even if he was standing at the back of the battlefield. After all, the two skills of olfactory imaging and all things have spirit were simply made for the commander profession. Compared with the commander of the other side, Lin Yuan had an unimaginable advantage. After all, he could observe every detail of the entire battlefield in detail, and all the instructions on his side could be transmitted to the minds of his subordinates fighting on the front line in the first place. However, the humans didn't have so many conveniences. Even a veteran like Su Wu couldn't observe the entire battlefield like Lin Yuan could through his sense of smell, and it was even more impossible for him to understand the situation of every demon beast and every soldier. He could only rely on his own experience and the general direction of the battlefield to determine what he should do next through the atmosphere of the battlefield and the general direction of the battle. Moreover, after coming up with a plan, Su Wu had to first inform the messenger at his side, and then the messenger would inform the flag bearer. Then the flag bearer would use the flag signal to send out a signal to the flag bearer, and then the flag bearer would inform the flag bearer. Although the entire process wasn't too complicated, the procedures were complicated. In the ever-changing battlefield, such a slow way of commanding was already out of line with Lin Yuan. Su Wu suddenly frowned. The demon beasts at the front suddenly changed their battle mode. None of the demon beasts went head-to-head with the heavy armor warriors. Instead, they began to twist and turn, and the range of their movements became larger and larger, causing the heavy armor warriors at the front to have to make large movements if they wanted to attack, and it might not even be effective. However, Su Wu didn't discover any strange movements from the other side. No matter how powerful a general was, no matter how high his tacit understanding with the soldiers under his command, he would still need a certain signal or hint before he could issue an order. However, there was clearly no movement from the Black Snake's side, and these demon beasts changed their previous rampaging posture and directly began a new battle strategy. Could it be that these demon beasts were all fighting according to their own ideas? Could it be that these demon beasts were all master tacticians? However, although Su Wu had obtained the information, his face didn't reveal the slightest change. He only lightly waved his hand and said to the messenger at his side, "Pass down the order. Have the soldiers at the front abandon the battle at hand and begin to return to the camp. Prepare the crossbow formation to receive them. No matter what, this batch of heavy armor warriors cannot be lost here." Just like when two human cultivators fought, the first move would often be a clash of blades. Lin Yuan wasn't willing to lose these demon beasts at the front, and Su Wu similarly didn't wish for the heavy armor warriors that the Xinwu dynasty had spent a lot of money to send out to directly lose here after disrupting the demon beasts' first round of attack rhythm. The opponent wants to retreat. First order demon beasts, bite them to death. Don't let them leave. Long-range attack, begin to accumulate power. Target, Jianghu army camp. Prepare to shoot. Lin Yuan's command once again rang out in the hearts of the demon beasts and humans. There wasn't the slightest ripple in the heterochromatic eyes, but the indifference in Lin Yuan's eyes made people's hearts palpitate. The F***CK? This time, the demon beast's change in battle strategy made Su Wu unable to help but curse. The demon beasts at the front line had changed their battle strategy once again. From the initial brute force to the subsequent flexibility, and then to the current pushing and pulling, it had only been a matter of a few minutes. However, these demon beasts seemed to have grasped every rhythm in his heart. He hadn't even had time to give the order when the demon beasts on the other side had already guessed his thoughts and made a change in battle strategy. Hula, crackle, all sorts of strange sounds rang out by his ears. Su Wu slowly raised his head, his face suddenly so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. All sorts of fireballs, icicles, water arrows, wind blades, stone spikes, all sorts of elemental attacks condensed by the demon beasts rained down like raindrops. Although at such a distance this degree of attack wouldn't cause any effective damage at all, if they encountered an unlucky individual they might actually be smashed to death. The most terrifying thing was that the places covered by these innate attacks were the positions formed by the crossbowmen that had just been assembled. It was as if the demonic beast on the opposite side could read minds. Every order would be in front of him, and it could even directly suppress him to death. Su Wu's fists creaked as he clenched them at his sides. He wanted nothing more than to punch that Black Snake commander to death. If the other party's rhythm of command was always one step ahead of his, then he would have no choice at all. It would be better to let the soldiers under his command enter a free battle rhythm. Although for the new Jianghu army free battle was actually more suitable for them to display their fighting strength, in that case, what was the point of him, a general, existing? If this matter were to spread out, saying that he, Su Wu, had been beaten by a Black Snake to the point of giving up his command, then he wouldn't be able to command any battles in the future. He might even be directly hidden away. Chapter 282. Tell the archers to retreat. Don't fight the demonic beasts head-on. Su Wu waved his hand heavily as a sullen expression flashed across his face. The demonic beasts would be heavily injured after taking a round of crossbows, but the archers wearing leather or even cloth armor would also be heavily injured after taking a round of projectiles from the demonic beasts. This kind of mutually destructive behavior might be profitable in other times, but now, it would only make the following battle more difficult. However, Su Wu's retreat was Su Wu's retreat, but Lin Yuan had no intention of backing down. He even ordered the demonic beasts under his command to start accumulating power and adjust their positions according to the enemy's formation. After all, wouldn't it be a pity if he didn't make use of a skill like olfactory imaging? As a result, the archers who had already retreated from their original location were still reorganizing their formation when the various elemental attacks that fell from the sky caught them off guard. Although the distance was quite far and the accuracy was not high enough, this round of attacks still caused thousands of casualties. Continue to retreat. Su Wu felt a slight pain in his temples. It was as if his every move was under the eyes of the enemy. This feeling made Su Wu somewhat sullen, but he couldn't find any rhythm that could be used to counterattack. He could only brace himself and continue this battle. However, it had already become a subconscious action for Su Wu to look at the enemy's camp from time to time. It wasn't a secret that the Black Snake knew how to use troops, but he had never heard of it before. The Black Snake was telepathically connected with all the demonic beasts under its command. It could command on the spot just by relying on its thoughts. Therefore he was very curious about the secrets of the Black Snake. He didn't believe that the Black Snake could command all the demonic beasts on the front line without doing anything. It could even observe the changes on the battlefield in detail. If there really was such an existence, it was no longer appropriate to describe him as a commander. He should be directly called the war god. He's starting to panic. The corner of Bailu's mouth widened, revealing a carefree smile. The demonic beasts and humans had been enemies for countless years. During this period there were also countless wars that broke out. However, he had never heard of a demonic beast that could completely suppress humans in terms of tactical thinking and on-the-spot command. After all, humans had been studying the art of war for so many years. Even the 7 dynasties had their own set of flag signals other than the common set of flag signals. They just didn't want their opponents to see through their intentions of commanding. However, after encountering the Black Snake, this domain of war that humans had played so much with seemed to have completely fallen into a disadvantage. It might be difficult for a group of thick-skinned demonic beasts to defeat a group of heavy-armored soldiers, but it was too easy to pin them down. Therefore, in Lin Yuan's opinion, the enemy's commander could either send in more troops to forcibly escort these heavy-armored soldiers back to the camp, or directly close the camp gate and let these heavy-armored soldiers fend for themselves. If it was the former, the price Xiong Wujuan would have to pay would be even greater than the death of these heavy-armored soldiers. However, as a commander he didn't only have to consider gains and losses. The most important thing was the problem of morale. After all, the composition of Xiong Wujuan's army was very complicated. If they gave up on any of the troops, the mercenaries and demon slayers would be worried about their gains and losses. They would feel that the next time something similar happened, they would be the ones to be abandoned. Bang. Su Wu heavily punched the guardrail of the observation deck. His gaze fell in the direction of Shunning City, and his eyes were full of gloominess. Although his total military strength was about 3 times that of the enemy, the margin for error was extremely low. The slightest carelessness would cause the army's morale to collapse. However, looking at the Black Snake's side, to put it bluntly, these humans who lived in the northern frontier should be the most resistant to demonic beasts. However, under the Black Snake's command, they instantly became united. What? Because of benefits? With the Black Snake's banner, the northern frontier's caravans could freely enter and exit the Hengduan mountain range. Even the hunting tigers and herbalists could enter deeper into the Hengduan mountain range to collect fays. In addition, the Black Snake had many reforms in the northern frontier that were in progress. Not only did they provide food and shelter, but they also provided high wages. Even those lazy local ruffians had begun to join the Black Snake's team. Ever since the northern frontier was taken over by the Black Snake, these people's annual income had increased by at least 10 times. There was even a trade route through the Hengduan mountain range that led directly to the territories of the other 6 dynasties. The selling of fays was almost monopolized, and the quality of life of the commoners was even comparable to the aristocratic families in the 7 border cities. As the saying went, it was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. The Black Serpent was a living god of wealth in the eyes of the people of the northern region. Back then, the people of the northern region had resisted the demonic beasts as much as they resisted the Shenwu dynasty's takeover of this territory. Some mercenaries had spontaneously gathered and prepared to participate in the defense of the northern frontier. However, their numbers had not reached a certain scale, so they did not directly join the main battle. They had been following behind Xiong Wujuan and disrupting his transport of supplies. Although it was not a big problem, it was still a hidden danger that could erupt into serious problems at any time. Su Wu deliberated for a moment and took a deep breath. He said in a deep voice, "Swordshield soldiers, spear forest guards, go out. You must protect the formation breaker. In addition, the Flying Bear cavalry is ready to go out at any time. Once the demonic beasts continue to chase, you guys will patrol around the periphery and harvest a wave of demonic beasts when you have the chance." Understood. All the generals and officers cupped their fists in response. Although they knew what kind of price they would have to pay for this action, they still felt at ease when the commander did not give up on their brothers at the front line. And on the other side, General Na Qin crossed his arms in front of his chest. His gloomy gaze fell on the other side's open camp gate. He picked up the stone stick beside him and roared, "Brothers, let's go." All movements on the battlefield were high-intensity exercises. After all, if you held back even a little, your opponent could give you a fatal blow. Therefore, it was not only Xiong Wujuan's heavy armored warriors who were tired. The first batch of demonic beasts was also tired. To think that they alone could stop this batch of human reinforcements was clearly a fool's dream. However, Lin Yuan had already prepared a follow-up plan. This demonic beast army led by Na Qin was almost entirely made up of tigers and leopards. Whether it was combat power or mobility, they were not much worse than the cavalry prepared by the humans. Seeing the reinforcements from the Black Snake side, Su Wu closed his eyes in pain. He did not dare to imagine what kind of bloody massacre would follow. Chapter 283. The claws and teeth of the demon beasts collided with the weapons and armors of the humans, creating a series of sparks. Corpses were left on the ground one after another. With just a rough estimate, the first round of confrontation between the two sides had directly taken up nearly 50,000 lives. The smell of blood permeated the air. To humans it was somewhat pungent. However, when the smell of blood was smelled by the demon beasts, it would arouse the demon beasts' desire to kill from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, at this time Lin Yuan not only had to pay attention to every movement on the battlefield, he also had to release his own aura to suppress the demon beasts that were ready to make a move. This was to prevent them from becoming slaves to the desire to kill. Finally, after the last human that did not have time to retreat died under Na Qin's stone rod, the Xiong Wujuan finally fell into silence after their initial insolence. They hid in the camp with their tails between their legs, not daring to make a sound. They did not even dare to take the initiative to provoke the conflict between the two sides. Even so, the demon beasts that were responsible for long-range attacks would still organize a volley of attacks from time to time. According to the coordinates given by Lin Yuan, they would attack the warriors in the Xiongwujuan camp. After a few waves of attacks, the people in the Xiongwujuan camp were in a state of panic. They did not even dare to gather together because not only would that not give them the slightest sense of security, it would even attract the attacks of the demon beasts. Lin Yuan closed his eyes slightly, and there was a hint of tiredness in his eyes. Although the two skills, olfactory imaging and all things have spirit for a long period of time, were extremely powerful in terms of commanding the battlefield, the consumption of one's energy was also extremely terrifying. In just a short while, Lin Yuan even felt that his vision was a little dark. A faint feeling of sleepiness was transmitted to his mind. "Let's call it a day." Lin Yuan coldly threw down these words. Then he took the initiative to turn around and walk towards the Shunning City's City Lord Mansion. He felt that his body had already reached its limit. If he continued to force himself to fight, he might not be able to completely destroy the morale of the Xiongwujuan army. Therefore he decisively chose to withdraw his troops. As for Xiongwujuan, Xiongwujuan's unstoppable momentum had been suppressed. Next he would prioritize whether or not Lin Yuan would notice his actions. Every decision he made was indecisive. Even if the other party had an absolute advantage in terms of military strength, sooner or later, they would be dragged down by the commander's indecisiveness. Taking a step back, Xiongwujuan had suffered a setback as soon as he arrived at the northern frontier. His original self-confidence had been directly shattered. Now that the demon beasts did not take the initiative to attack them, they were already burning incense, let alone talk about counterattacking. No matter how capable the enemy commander was, it would take him at least 2 to 3 days to restore the morale and confidence of his subordinates after being suppressed on the first day. Night fell. Lin Yuan was awakened by a burst of noise. He could not help but sit up from the soft couch. Through the gap between the windows, he glanced at the small courtyard outside. 2 figures in black were tied together, staring blankly at the ground. The night was hazy. Lin Yuan did not want to stimulate his spirit, so he did not activate the olfactory imaging, nor did he see the other party's appearance. However, with so many people gathered in his small courtyard, Lin Yuan instinctively narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed through his heterochromatic eyes. He used the snake head to open the window and looked over with his head tilted. Hu Yen was half squatting beside the 2 men in black. He had a cigarette in his mouth, frowning and thinking about something. Seeing Lin Yuan open the window, he slowly stood up from the ground and bowed. "I'm sorry, Demon Emperor. I'm sorry to disturb you." "What's the matter?" Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. Only then did he get a clear look at the faces of the 2 men in black. They were both disciples of the collateral branch of the Hu family. Their talents were average, but they had the support of Hu Yen, the city lord of Shunning City. Usually they were arrogant young masters in Shunning City. How could they be tied up here today? Moreover, Hu Yen was squatting next to them with a worried face. A thought sprouted in Lin Yuan's mind. Suddenly, a chill bloomed in his heterochromatic eyes. Seeing Lin Yuan's attitude, Hu Yen knew that Lin Yuan had already guessed why the 2 disciples of the Hu family were here at night. He could only lower his head and say in a low voice, "These 2 good-for-nothings were bewitched by evil people and wanted to assassinate Demon Emperor. It was only because I discovered it early that I came to stop them in time. Otherwise, it would have led to a disaster and it would have been too late for me to regret it." What he meant by a disaster was obviously not that the 2 disciples of the Hu family had the ability to assassinate Lin Yuan. Even if Hu Yen were to do it himself, he wouldn't dare to say that he had 30% confidence. After all, the strength of the Black Snake had always been unfathomable. A 10th-level Spirit Awakening could take down a Wisdom Enlightening Demon Beast, and a 4th-level Wisdom Enlightening could take down a 9th-level Airborne Realm Human. It was as if fighting above its level was as simple as eating a meal for the Black Snake. The big mistake Hu Yen was talking about was that once the plan of the 2 disciples of the Hu family to assassinate the Black Snake was carried out, the failure rate was almost 100%. After that, not only them, but the entire Hu family would not be able to escape the disaster. Hu Yen was very clear that although the Black Snake had taken in all the 7 city lords at the border, the only one he truly trusted was Lei Fan, who had always maintained a cooperative relationship with him. Of course, the fundamental reason for this trust was that the mountain-blocking city had already been destroyed. Lei Fan was equivalent to a young master who came out of nowhere and had no connections at the northern frontier. As a city lord, he wasn't even as loved as the Black Snake. However, the other 6 city lords were different. Each of them had been operating in the northern frontier for a long time. Although they didn't have the confidence to challenge the Black Snake, if they were really unhappy, they could instantly paralyze a third of the northern frontier. Therefore, the Black Snake had been buying people's hearts for more than half a month. At the same time, he was also looking for the flaws of the 6 city lords, hoping to eliminate them as soon as possible. Have you found out who contacted them? Lin Yuan's gaze fell on Hu Yan's face as he asked in an indifferent voice. Although the status of most of the disciples of the Hu family was not as good as before, their economic income was definitely not low. If not for the more attractive conditions, why would they risk their lives to assassinate the young master of the Hu family instead of the young master of the Hu family? The occurrence of this incident also meant that the spies of the Shenwu dynasty had silently sneaked into Shunning City and began to plan a sabotage operation. No matter what, Lin Yuan had to find them as soon as possible. Otherwise, who knew what these guys could do? Chapter 284. They refused to say. Hu Yan glared angrily at his 2 nephews, a look of indignation on his face. He had worked himself to death in the front, even bearing the infamy of Padian, all so that the Hu family would not fall, so that those useless juniors in the family could live a better life. But now, these juniors had almost handed the knife to kill him to the Black Snake. How could he not be angry? Refused to say? Why don't I ask? Immediately, a frivolous voice sounded. Lei Fan, Luo Su and Li Zhongxing, who had rushed over, slowly appeared. With just a glance, Lin Yuan's gaze was fixed on Luo Su, who was standing on the right side of Lei Fan, his body covered in white bandages. The temperature in his multicolored eyes was even colder than when he had heard that someone wanted to kill him. It was a very familiar scent. That was the power of a demonic beast from purgatory. Lin Yuan, who had dealt with his lordship countless times, almost at the moment he saw Luo Su, he could feel the power of purgatory from Luo Su. It was also at this moment that Mo Luo, who was in charge of guarding Lin Yuan, took a step forward. A pair of cold and ruthless eyes fell on Luo Su, and he immediately bared his fangs. As Lin Yuan's first experimental subject, Mo Luo had been groomed by Lin Yuan to be an intelligent perception third-level existence. Although it was not considered much among the many beast kings in the Hengduan Mountains, but it was still considered a mainstay under Lin Yuan's command. Now, it could feel the same kind of aura from Luo Su, and it instantly felt as if its tail had been stepped on. This is. Lin Yuan did not put on any airs and directly came out from the window, his gaze fixed on Luo Su's face. The hostility in his eyes was obvious. Lei Fan cleared his throat and said, "This is Luo Su, one of my right-hand men. That brother me you mentioned earlier was also interrogated by Luo Su, but in the end." Speaking up to this point, Lei Fan had already stopped himself from continuing, as his eyes revealed a tinge of nervousness. Although the Black Snake had never brought up that matter, Lei Fan could not help but feel flustered in his heart. After all, the Black Snake's style had always been to kill decisively, and within a short period of time, Luo Su was extremely important to Lei Fan. Now that Luo Su had suddenly bumped into the Black Snake, and the Black Snake was even exuding an inexplicable hostility, Lei Fan's heart was immediately in suspense. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and swept his gaze across Luo Su and Lei Fan, his eyes revealing a profound look. Even if a purgatory fiend beast could disguise itself as an ordinary fiend beast, it was still very difficult for it to suppress its violent instincts. Once it was stimulated, it would be even harder for it to control itself. If the one who interrogated Brother Mi was this Luo Su, then he could understand why Brother Mi died in the interrogation room. But from the looks of it, Lei Fan did not seem to know that Luo Su was a purgatory creature. This was very interesting. Seeing that the Black Snake's attention was on him, and thinking of the Black Snake's inexplicable hostility, Luo Su could only shrug his shoulders, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Previously, he could not figure out why the Black Snake had shown such hostility when they had first met. But now, it seemed that the Black Snake had long held a grudge against him because of the incident with Brother Mi. If not for Lei Fan's mediation, the Black Snake might have already made a move on him. The Black Snake, Lei Fan, and Luo Su stood from 3 different angles to understand this matter. Each of their understanding had a certain degree of deviation, but they all tacitly chose to remain silent. "Alright, then I'll leave it to you. I hope to get some useful information." Lin Yuan nodded lightly at Luo Su. The purgatory fiend beasts were very interested in destruction, and the 2 young masters of the Hu family were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. They might not even be able to withstand a vicious beating, not to mention Luo Su, who was proficient in interrogation and was very interested in it. Not to mention a few spies who had infiltrated Shining City. Even the location of their ancestral tombs would be revealed. On the other side, in the Xiongwu army's camp, Su Wu's face was gloomy as he placed both hands on the war sand table, his gaze sweeping across the topographic map of the northern frontier. He had suffered enough at the hands of the Black Snake today. Towards the Black Snake's meticulous observation of the battlefield, as well as the invisible and formless way of commanding that was always one step ahead of him, he had suffered enough. If they were to fight again in a short period of time, it would just be repeating today's disadvantage. Everyone, what do you think? Su Wu's gaze fell. Below, the group of officers, the Mercenary Corps commander, and the demon-subduing group commander all lowered their heads in silence. After a long while, a 20-something officer slowly stood up and said in a low voice, "General Su, the Black Snake's commanding ability is a little too strong. If both sides station their main forces here, the only result is that we will be nibbled away by them bit by bit, and finally completely lose all hope of victory." Continue. Su Wu gave him an encouraging smile and nodded lightly. What the officer said was indeed the truth. If both sides' main forces were to be gathered here, they would only be nibbled away by the other side bit by bit. Seeing Su Wu's encouragement, the young officer's face flushed red as he said in a low voice, "So, I was thinking if we could be a little bolder. Since we have an absolute advantage in numbers, why don't we take the initiative to split our forces? It seems feasible. This is a good idea." The other generals also nodded in agreement with the young general's suggestion. After all, their current numbers were 3 times that of the Black Snake's corps. If they were to take the initiative to split their forces, the Black Snake's main forces would still have to stay here to deal with them. Otherwise, once the difference in strength between the two sides was too great, Su Wu's side would not even need to use any tactics and could directly flatten the Black Snake's camp. However, if the Black Snake did not split their forces, the other cities in the northern frontier would be basically defenseless in their eyes. Even if they did not succeed in winning this war, they could plunder large amounts of phase and wealth, and at the same time, suppress the Black Snake's development. Once the Shenwu dynasty survived this period, wouldn't it be easy to deal with a small Black Snake? Then it's decided. Let's split up and fight. Su Wu nodded slightly and once again looked at the war sandbox in front of him. He said in a low voice, "Xiong Ruei, you will lead the Flying Bear cavalry around Shining City and launch a surprise attack in this direction. Li Qi, you will lead the archers and the Divine Crafts camp to this direction. Along the way you will build defensive fortifications and reduce the living space of the Black Snake and his corps. I don't believe that all the Hengduan mountain ranges demon beasts are genius commanders. Also Zhaoyi, I will leave these mountain paths to you. Set up strongholds and don't give the Black Snake subordinates a chance to sneak attack us from behind." Chapter 285. The next day, early in the morning, Xiong Wujuan's movements in the camp attracted the attention of many people, but Lin Yuan remained in Shining City. There was not a single ripple in his eyes, as if Xiong Wujuan's tactic of dividing his forces had no effect on him. "Lord Yao Emperor." Hu Yen bowed as he walked into the city lord's manor. He then bowed to Lin Yuan, who was sitting cross-legged. "Have you found it?" Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and a touch of splendor flashed in his eyes. The owner of the tailor shop in the south of the city was a spy that the embroidered guard had placed in Shining City long ago. The Great Shun restaurant in the west of the city where they met was also one of the embroidered guard's secret bases. According to our investigation, at least 70% of the embroidered guard spies in Shining City have been uncovered. Aside from a few embroidered guard members who committed suicide, the rest have been detained and are awaiting interrogation. We should be able to uncover more embroidered guard bases and members. A strange light flashed in Hu Yan's eyes. He didn't know why Xiong Wujuan's actions hadn't attracted the Black Snake's attention. However, the Black Snake was extremely interested in the embroidered guard spies in Shining City. It seemed as if it wanted to exterminate them all. "You are very confused. You think that I am indifferent to the threat before me, but I am concerned about a bunch of spies and spies. This is no different from a slow suicide, right?" Lin Yuan's lips curled into a faint smile. He said in a deep voice, "Xiong Wujuan's tactic of dividing his forces is an open one. Even if we know about it, we can't do anything to them. In fact, this is indeed the case. That is why I am not concerned about their actions. But let's take a step back. Tell me, why would Xiong Wujuan, who clearly came from another region, dare to divide his forces in the northern frontier with you natives? Although Lin Yuan maintained a smile on his face, there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. Even his voice was somewhat cold. It was as if he was on the verge of exploding with rage. You mean? Hu Yan's eyes flashed with horror. The northern frontier wasn't like the southern plains or coastal areas. There were a lot of forests in the northern frontier. If it weren't for those experienced hunters, it would be very easy for them to get lost in the forests. However, a group of foreign Xiong Wujuan dared to divide their forces in such a terrain. This meant that Xiong Wujuan didn't just have eyes and ears in the northern frontier. The Xunwu dynasty definitely had a lot of spies in the northern frontier. Among them, there was no lack of guides who understood the terrain of the northern frontier. The reason why Xiong Wujuan dared to do this was either because they had the confidence, or because the leader of Xiong Wujuan was a complete fool. He didn't know how terrifying the complex terrain of the northern frontier was. Moreover, it was currently winter. It could be considered one of the most terrifying periods of the northern frontier. If one accidentally entered the forests and encountered a sudden snowstorm, the surroundings would be covered in a vast expanse of whiteness. Their footprints would be completely buried. Even an experienced guide could get lost in the forest. Of course, it would be fine if they only got lost in the forest. However, the most terrible thing was that most of the forests in the northern frontier were connected to the Hengduan mountain range. If they didn't choose the right direction and rashly moved forward, it was very likely that they would enter the Hengduan mountain range. It was even possible that they would break into the nest of a powerful demon beast. Although the northern frontier was now under the rule of the Black Snake, in the eyes of many demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range, humans were still incomparably hateful existences. Only when the northern frontier caravan could generate enough income for the Hengduan mountain range, would Lin Yuan be able to apply for some status symbols from the demon beast palace. And only when these status symbols were displayed in time, the demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range wouldn't rashly attack humans. Lin Yuan flicked his tongue. His eyes flashed with a hint of coldness as he coldly said, "Since I can't deal with their division strategy for the time being, I will first dig out these people's eyes today." There were too many secrets in the northern frontier. After all, Lin Yuan's previous world was prosperous and powerful. It was a world of peace that the people of this world couldn't imagine. Therefore, in Lin Yuan's view, there were too many things that needed to be changed in this world. However, now wasn't the time to announce them. He could only implement them in the northern frontier. Moreover, Lin Yuan wasn't selfless enough to let his opponents become rich and powerful. Eliminating these spies was the most important thing right now. As for the division strategy, wait until Xiong Wujuan's troops pulled apart a certain distance. Lin Yuan would then tell them how stupid and laughable this kind of action was. Humans and demonic beasts had been fighting for so many years. Although the demonic beasts had always been the ones who lost, it was undeniable that the demonic beasts still occupied the Hengduan mountain range in the center of the Jianghu continent. It wasn't only because the Seven Empires hoped that the demonic beasts in the Hengduan mountain range could restrain their opponents. More importantly, even if the Seven Empires gathered their strength, it was still impossible to completely eliminate the demonic beasts. Even if they could eliminate the demonic beasts, the Seven Empires would suffer great losses. It was even possible that both sides would perish together. The monstrous beast's powerful individual combat ability was displayed here. Monstrous beasts below the Heavenly Dipper realm, not to say that a monstrous beast could fight against 10 humans of the same realm on the battlefield, but fighting against 3 was definitely not a problem. The reason why Xiong Wujuan could be in a stalemate with him was entirely because Xiong Wujuan's total military strength was superior to his. Hence, Lin Yuan didn't dare to act rashly. But after 2 days, that would be another matter altogether. Lin Yuan really wanted to thank the existence who suggested the division strategy. First of all, it was certain that among the demonic beasts, there were people who were good at commanding in battle. But for someone like Lin Yuan, there weren't many of them. Hence, to a certain extent, the division strategy could indeed counteract Lin Yuan's bug-like commanding ability. Then the question was, when demonic beasts fought against humans, did they really need to be commanded? Hesitation would lead to defeat. When demonic beasts fought against humans, they would be at a disadvantage if they played tricks and schemes. Hence, they only needed to make use of their strong physiques to charge forward recklessly, and that would be it. Lord Demon Emperor, City Lord Hu. Lei Fan walked quickly into the City Lord's residence, his brows creased together. Anyone who saw him would be able to tell that he had met with quite a bit of trouble. What's wrong? Lin Yuan and Hu Yen opened their mouths and asked at the same time. Because it was Luo Su's interrogation, Lei Fan was in charge of investigating the embroidered uniform guards. At this moment, Lei Fan appeared before them with a face full of worry. Hence, they quickly connected the dots that something had gone wrong with the investigation of the embroidered uniform guards. Trouble, big trouble. Lei Fan shook his head, his face full of bitterness as he said in a deep voice, I had thought that the embroidered uniform guards lying dormant in the northern frontier were just a bunch of nobodies who couldn't be brought to the table. But. Chapter 320, Monthly Votes. Chapter 286. But what? Lin Yuan and Hu Yin asked at the same time. The embroidered uniform guards were not some random Tom, Dick or Harry. If one had to give an example, this organization was similar to the Ming Dynasty's embroidered uniform guards in Lin Yuan's previous life. Furthermore, it was not the embroidered uniform guards that had become the lackeys of the East faction, but could even be compared to the embroidered uniform guards that Liu Bing was in charge of. To such a secret organization, even the slightest mistake could lead to a series of huge problems. After the previous incident, I have not been at ease, so when Luo Su was interrogating him, I had been monitoring him. Previously there had not been any problems, but just now, I saw that the person being interrogated was Zhang Shi. Lei Fan's voice was not loud, but the name Zhang Shi, when Hu Yen heard it, was like a sudden clap of thunder. SSS. The sound of a cold breath being sucked in suddenly came out from Hu Yan's mouth. After a while, Hu Yen still looked like he had not recovered from his shock, his face full of confusion as he said, You said that the person being interrogated was Zhang Shi. Is it the Jianghu Shi that I am thinking of? Lei Fan did not reply, only nodding his head heavily. As the Beast King of the Hengduan Mountains, Lin Yuan knew of the Shenwu dynasty's divine martial emperor, and also knew of some famous generals that dealt with demonic beasts. But regarding the internal secret organization of the Shenwu dynasty, he did not know much about it and could only look on in confusion. But from Lei Fan and Hu Yan's reaction, he could tell that this Jianghu Shi was not simple. Although in such a secret organization, anyone who could be caught so easily was definitely not a big fish, but from the reaction of the two, if this Jianghu Shi was not a big fish that had been caught by chance, then this Jianghu Shi must have some kind of formidable existence standing behind him. And it must be the kind of existence that they did not dare to offend even after they had seen through the Shenwu dynasty. The Embroidered Guard is a secret organization that belongs to the Shenwu dynasty. It's also a sect. In terms of power, the Embroidered Guard is definitely not inferior to the Sword Dancer or the Shadow Walker. They specialize in investigation, assassination, and espionage. The current leader of the Embroidered Guard is Zhang Xiu. Zhang Shi was Zhang Xiu's nephew. To Zhang Xiu, who had no wife or children, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Zhang Shi was his son. Most importantly, Zhang Shi's ability wasn't weak. It was even to the extent that he could be considered an outstanding figure amongst the younger generation of the Embroidered Guard. For someone as capable as Zhang Shi, his arrogance is inevitable. That's why there are very few cases within the Embroidered Guard that can make Zhang Shi personally take action. According to my investigation, this Zhang Shi wasn't captured by our people from a secret base of the Embroidered Guard. Instead, he swaggered out to surrender himself. As Lei Fan spoke, he couldn't help narrowing his eyes. He said in a low voice, The feeling that Zhang Shi gives me is that he is deliberately reminding us that Zhang Xiu has already noticed us and has specially sent Zhang Shi to greet us. After all, Zhang Xiu has been tested countless times over the years to reach his current position. His self-confidence has long since turned into a thick conceit. At the same time, his actions. Lin Yuan's face darkened as he continued Lei Fan's words. He said in a cold voice, He is also exerting psychological pressure on you. If I'm not wrong, this Zhang Xiu is not only the leader of the Embroidered Guard, he is also an extremely terrifying existence. His targets usually don't have good endings, right? Lin Yuan was very clear that the name of Black Snake had been spread far and wide in the northern frontier. Not just anyone could come to the northern frontier to provoke him. Therefore, this Zhang Shi who had swaggered out to expose himself must have had full confidence that the two words Zhang Xiu would be enough to make these people in the northern frontier lose their initial confidence in Black Snake. This kind of psychological tactic was not foreign to Lin Yuan. It could even be said that he was very familiar with it. Facts had proven that from Hu Yen and Lei Fan's actions, Zhang Shi's actions had indeed dealt a blow to the confidence of these people who had just submitted to Lin Yuan not long ago. It's not just terrifying. Hu Yen shook his head with a look of fear. He frowned and said, Zhang Xiu has taken over the embroidered guard for almost 7 years now. He has taken over a total of 103 missions. Every target that Zhang Xiu has set his eyes on had no chance of survival. Besides, it's hard to say what level Zhang Xiu's cultivation has reached. But Zhang Xiu's battle record of killing a Heavenly Dipper realm expert is real. And it's not just once. It was only at this moment that Lin Yuan's eyes showed a slight ripple of emotion. The success rate of Zhang Xiu's missions and his reputation in the Sky Martial continent had nothing to do with him. The law of the jungle applied to all places. As long as one had enough strength, no matter how famous a cultivator was, they could be killed with a single punch. And if one's strength was not enough, even if one had an awe-inspiring reputation, they would only be stepped on by the ambitious younger generation. But he had killed a Heavenly Dipper realm existence, and not just once. With this battle record, it was indeed a little frightening. Lin Yuan, who had not completed his transformation into a flood dragon, did not know what level the battle prowess of a Heavenly Dipper realm existence was. So even if he entered the state of blood boil, he did not have complete confidence that he could compare to a Heavenly Dipper realm existence. If there was still time, Lin Yuan would not have to panic. But now that Zhang Xi had jumped out, it naturally meant that Zhang Xiu was also on the way. What should we do? A trace of panic flashed across Hu Yan's face. Originally, he had no choice but to rely on Black Snake to save his life. Later on, the benefits that Black Snake could bring were too tempting. Being a city lord at the border of the Jianghu dynasty was tantamount to being exiled. So, working under Black Snake was actually much more comfortable than working under the Jianghu dynasty. But at this moment, Hu Yan suddenly regretted giving up the powerful and deep-rooted Jianghu dynasty and switching to Black Snake's subordinates. After this war, Black Snake might be able to continue living. After all, it was backed by the Hengduan mountain range. Moreover, Black Snake had the bloodline of the Dragon clan in its body. At the same time, with the Hengduan mountain range and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the Jianghu dynasty would not dare to directly ask Black Snake to pay with its life. But a traitor, like him, had no chance of survival at all. Let's take one step at a time. If Zhang Xiu is really that scary, the Azure River Empire and the Frost Mirror Empire would not dare to invade the Jianghu dynasty. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with a trace of ridicule as he said this in a teasing manner. Zhang Xiu might have indeed placed his attention on him, but with such a precarious situation, Zhang Xiu might not dare to directly come to the northern frontier to find trouble with him. 340 monthly votes plus more. Chapter 287. At the same time. Jianghu Dynasty, Imperial Capital. Zhang Xiu expressionlessly climbed out of the ruins of a carriage that was almost smashed. He then pulled out a weapon that looked like a samurai sword from behind his waist. He held the hilt with both hands, and there was not a single ripple in his deep black eyes. Almost all the servants and guards who came with him were dead. Within the Imperial Capital, there was only one force that could hide from the eyes and ears of the embroidered uniform guards, know his route, and dare to directly ambush him. There was only one force and only one force. The remnants of the Jiao clan are really like endless cockroaches. It was almost impossible to see Zhang Xiu's wrist move clearly. In just one move, the long sword in Zhang Xiu's hand was already stained with blood, and there were two twitching corpses beside his feet. Swish, 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 swish. Without any hesitation, the remaining members of the Jiao clan who were hiding in the dark directly took out all kinds of weapons such as crossbows and launched a storm of attacks towards Zhang Xiu. Under such a storm of arrows, even a thick-skinned demon beast wouldn't dare to say that he could survive under such a storm of arrows. However, Zhang Xiu's eyes showed no trace of fear. He moved and the sword was raised. Cold light shone in all directions. The arrows were cut down by the blade. Zhang Xiu's figure was like a butterfly dancing in the wind. There was an inexplicable elegance in the poignant beauty. The blade stopped and the figure stopped. Almost all the remnants of the Jiao clan who were lying in ambush in this alley were killed. Zhang Xiu expressionlessly wiped the samurai sword that was almost dyed red with blood on his snow-white clothes. When his gaze swept across the mess, he expressionlessly stepped forward and finished off the remnants of the Jiao clan who were lying on the ground pretending to be dead. Qingjiang Dynasty, Shuangjian Dynasty, Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, Hengduan Mountains. Besieged from four directions, the Jianghu dynasty was facing the biggest crisis since its establishment. Even the divine martial emperor, who was as stable as Mount Tai in the imperial capital, could barely hold on, let alone the surviving members of the Jiao clan, who had been hiding in the dark and had been suppressed by the Shenwu dynasty to the point of suffocation. In this war, the damage caused to the Shenwu dynasty by the four superpowers combined might not even be as terrifying as the surviving members of the Jiao clan. Countless senior ministers and capable officials were assassinated, and some small sects were even destroyed by the surviving members of the Jiao clan. There were even signs of the surviving members of the Jiao clan active on many battlefields. When faced with this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, almost all of these people went crazy. As long as they could bring down the Shenwu dynasty, even if they would be cursed by tens of thousands of people, they would not even frown. Tisk. Zhang Xiu lightly smacked his lips twice. He stood beside the mountain of corpses and pondered for a moment. He murmured, "Looks like I won't be able to leave in a short period of time. These damn cockroaches, why can't I kill all of them?" Zhang Xiu did not even doubt that once he left the imperial capital and lost the elite power of the embroidered uniform guards, these surviving members of the Jiao clan would do even more crazy things. It was even possible that they would assassinate the emperor. Zhang Xiu reached out and scratched his hair. The corner of his mouth raised and he laughed a little nervously. He murmured, "Could it be that an interesting prey has appeared? Well, forget it, there's still a chance." However, what no one expected was that a major event that would affect the war situation at the northern frontier quietly happened in Xiong Wujuan's camp. Su Wu, who was in the commander's tent studying the war situation, suddenly heard footsteps behind him. He turned his head with a puzzled expression and looked behind him. He happened to see the young lieutenant who suggested to split up the troops. A smile slowly appeared on Su Wu's face. He said in a deep voice, "I remember that you are in the same group as Xiong Rui, right? Why haven't you left yet?" Although he has a bad temper, he has always appreciated people with ability. This time, if you can accumulate enough merit under Xiong Rui, you can at least rise several ranks when you return. Su Wu's words did not make the young lieutenant happy at all. He only narrowed his eyes slightly. His tone was completely different from before. He said indifferently, "But I don't have any thoughts about being promoted. My only thought is to cause chaos at the northern frontier. It would be best if everyone dies in this war." When the young lieutenant finished speaking, the smile on Su Wu's face had completely disappeared. "You?" Su Wu's eyes widened. He heard the footsteps behind him suddenly become more hurried. He was completely unprepared and could not react at all. In a moment of desperation, Su Wu could only reach out and flip the sand table in front of him. Only then did he gain a sliver of space. But even so, Su Wu still felt a burning pain coming from his back. The young lieutenant, who seemed to have changed into a different person, squatted beside Su Wu. He used a piece of white cloth to slowly wipe away the blood on the dagger. He said with a gloomy gaze, "General Su, even if you hide, it's useless. Before I came, I had already smeared poison on the dagger. Soon you will die here." "Crazy? What good will it do you if I die?" Su Wu's face was as gloomy as water. He lay on the ground and turned his head to stare at the young lieutenant. The young lieutenant stood up from the ground and said with a smile, "Who knows? Perhaps the entire Xiongwu army will descend into chaos after losing their commander. The conflicts that you've suppressed will erupt once again. When that happens, be it the Xiongwu army itself or the Northern Territory army that's eyeing us covetously, everyone will be dragged into the rhythm of war. This is everything I want." At this moment, Su Wu was more and more certain that this young lieutenant was simply a lunatic. His previous brilliant performance was just to dispel his doubts and wariness, so as to lay the groundwork for today's sudden attack. But now he could already feel a trace of coldness coming from the wound on his waist. Without a doubt, the poison that the young lieutenant had smeared on the dagger had already started to take effect. Su Wu was trembling like a sieve. The strength in his body was draining away bit by bit. His eyes could only look at the back of the young lieutenant that was getting further and further away. His mouth was dry and bitter and he could not speak at all. Now that the Xiong Wujuan had divided its forces, no one would suspect that his death was caused by this young man who had obtained everyone's recognition and had a bright future ahead of him. Instead, the first suspect would be the Northern Frontier Army. The chaotic battle that had been suppressed between both sides was about to begin. And he, who had realized this, no longer had the strength to stop it. Finally, the last trace of warmth in his body disappeared. Su Wu's eyes stared blankly as he lay on the ground, breathing his last breath. And the young lieutenant had already left this tent far away. Even the sentries in the surroundings had been cleaned up by him using the advantage of his identity. No one would know that he had come here today. 360 monthly votes plus updates. Chapter 288. The next day early in the morning. In the mansion of the mayor of Shenning City. Lin Yuan almost directly jumped out of bed, his heterochromatic eyes flashing with deep doubts. Yesterday was the day when the Xiongwujuan officially began to divide the troops. Troops slowly left the Xiongwujuan camp, and began to spread according to the plan they set up at the beginning. Everything was as Lin Yuan expected. This was an open conspiracy from the beginning to the end. Even if Lin Yuan knew the tactic of dividing the troops, and also knew the consequences of leaving it alone, he could only obediently stay in Shenning City to rest, and did not dare to rashly start a war with the Xiongwujuan. But Lin Yuan never thought that just because he did not use the olfactory imaging skill for one night, the highest commander of the Xiongwujuan, Su Wu, would be found dead in the camp. There was a wound on his waist, which looked like it was penetrated by a sharp knife, but the traces of tearing were obvious. And from the surrounding blood, the components of snake venom were also extracted. Therefore the Xiongwujuan side did not think at all, and directly believed that Su Wu's death was done by some demon beasts who were good at assassination. At the same time of extreme anger, the Xiongwujuan high-level officials felt insecure. For a moment, no one dared to stand out to take over the command of Su Wu, and they were afraid that they would become the next assassination target of the demon beasts. Ahem. The young lieutenant, who had long expected this scene, cleared his throat and took the initiative to stand out and said, "Officers, I have something to say, I hope you can give me a chance." After his voice fell, the group of high-level officials quickly recognized that the young lieutenant who spoke was the one who suggested that they implement the tactic of dividing the troops, and who was highly approved by Su Wu and the others. Although in this kind of occasion, a mere lieutenant was not qualified to speak at all, but most of the people present were constantly giving up the power in their hands. At this time, when someone took the initiative to stand out and take the pressure, they were naturally happy. In addition, the young lieutenant was a person who was approved by everyone, so naturally no one would shoot the bird that stood out. Seeing the gradually quiet crowd, a touch of joy flashed in the eyes of the young lieutenant. Everything was carried out according to his plan. General Su was the commander specially appointed by the Shenwu dynasty. Now that General Su is dead but the war is still going on, the command right now is vacant. Everyone, whether you really don't want it or not, why don't you all give it a try? How about we change the way we play? The young lieutenant slowly spread out his hands and said in a deep voice, "Let's go according to General Su's arrangement before his death. Each unit will act according to the original plan. When it's time to gather, everyone will gather together. As for the military merits, it will depend on the military merits you have." As soon as he finished speaking, many people looked at each other in dismay. This was indeed a good idea. After all, Su Wu's death was not Black Serpent's. If they continued to stay here, they would just have to change commanders and experience Black Serpent's absolute control of the battlefield again. Therefore, other than Su Wu, this position of commander was a hot potato to anyone else. However, everyone was fighting for themselves. If they turned around and used their own merits to speak for themselves, that would be another matter altogether. Firstly, they had already caused a certain amount of damage to the demonic beasts at that time. Even if they did not successfully destroy the Northern Frontier group under Black Serpent this time, the profits were definitely not to be underestimated. At least when the battle report was sent back to the imperial capital, the Shenwu Emperor would start to pay attention to the battle situation instead of thinking about how to replace them. At the same time, it was also necessary to give a certain amount of damage to the demonic beasts. Otherwise, the death of Su Wu would almost directly cause the entire defense system of the Xiongwu army to collapse. Even the archers and the light infantry would have a small-scale armed melee. If this continued, no matter who sat in the commander's position, the demonic beasts would continue to assassinate them. No one objected, which meant that the chaotic battle had begun. In the mayor's mansion of Shenning City. Damn it. Hu Yan was unusually irritated as he paced back and forth in the hall. He had already lost count of how many antiques he had broken. Su Wu had not died earlier, but he had to die at this critical juncture when they were splitting up the troops. Those generals under his command had already been split up and they were probably still in a state where no one was willing to submit to anyone. It was even more impossible for them to obediently merge their troops. The Xiongwu army splitting up to fight was already an irreversible matter. The Black Serpent could not be bothered. After all, after these people split up, they would only plunder the wealth of the northern frontier. Perhaps the Black Serpent would also suffer a certain amount of losses. But if this matter were to be shared among the city lords, it would be a huge blow to their bones. The city lord took a sip of the wine in his cup and said slowly, "What's the use of being irritated now? Could it be that you can still revive that Su Wu fellow? If you ask me, since things have already come to this, why don't we just obediently wait for the Black Serpent's next instructions?" Although the city lord did not like the demonic beasts, but he liked a wealthy life. If the Black Serpent could bring him and his brothers enough benefits, then he could temporarily put aside his conflicts and prejudices and do his best to cooperate with the demonic beasts. Among the 7 city lords, other than Lei Fan, the most loyal to the Black Serpent should be the city lord. There's something fishy about this matter. Lei Fan stretched out his hand to hold his forehead, his eyes filled with puzzlement. How could it be so coincidental? Right after we split up the troops, Su Wu suddenly died in the camp. And the wounds on his body are completely undetectable. And no matter if it's the open or hidden sentries, they were all taken care of secretly by someone. Such a move, no matter how I think about it, it can't possibly be us. There were indeed quite a number of people in the Demon Emperor's Association who were proficient in assassination, but these people were all busy fighting with the embroidered uniform guards. Besides that, it would not be easy for the people from Shunning City to sneak into the Jianghu army's camp. After all, they were troops from the southern coastal region and their accent was completely different from the northern frontier people. Even communication was not easy. So how could the people from the northern frontier sneak into the Jianghu army's camp, kill more than 10 sentries consecutively, assassinate Su Wu and then swagger away? Just as the 3 of them were pondering and discussing, the Black Serpent, whose eyes were filled with coldness, wriggled his snake body as he walked in. His gaze swept across the faces of the 3 of them and his voice was filled with cold killing intent. "I had hoped to wait for a suitable opportunity, but now time waits for no man. If we don't beat these fellows into submission today, who knows to what extent they'll climb all over us tomorrow. Tonight we'll attack their camp directly. In just one round we'll completely shatter their morale." As his voice fell, the faces of the 3 of them were filled with shock as they stared at Lin Yuan in disbelief. It was as if they could not believe that Lin Yuan would step right into the enemy's trap at such a time, and start an all-out war. Chapter 289. Black Snake, do you know what you are saying? Lei Fan's eyes widened in horror, as if he could not believe that the usually rational Black Snake would make such a decision. Hu Yen sat on the chair and deliberated for a moment before he suddenly opened his mouth and said, "I support Black Snake's idea. I know Su Wu, he is one of the famous generals of the younger generation of the Jianghu dynasty. Otherwise, the task of eliminating us would not have fallen on his shoulders. So no matter if it is because we are a hidden danger now or because of the long-term considerations, Su Wu would not be a sacrifice in the internal strife of the Jianghu dynasty. But Su Wu's death was also not our doing. So other than our 2 sides, it is highly possible that a third power has interfered." A third power? Suddenly everyone connected the dots. The reason why the Jianghu dynasty had fallen to such a state was because they had offended a very powerful power. Could it be? But after thinking about it carefully, they shook their heads in distress. Although their northern frontier was nominally subordinate to the Jianghu dynasty, but they were already at the stage where they only listened to orders and did not listen to orders. As long as the northern frontier could survive this ordeal, then the internal powers of the Jianghu dynasty would no longer remain silent. When the time came, the various warlords would set up their own territories, and the influence of the Jianghu dynasty's royal family would be greatly reduced. If the other party's target was the Jianghu dynasty, even if it was not convenient for them to directly help the northern frontier, they would definitely not make a move to create trouble for them. Now, this mysterious third party was not here for the Jianghu dynasty, but seemed to be here for the northern frontier. The purpose of assassinating Su Wu was to create chaos in the Jianghu army, causing the entire northern frontier to fall into the flames of war and be unable to extricate themselves. Thinking of this, almost everyone's gaze was fixed on Lin Yuan's face. Lin Yuan? Being stared at by the 3 of them, even someone as thick-skinned as Lin Yuan felt a little uncomfortable. He glared back at them one by one and said in a low voice, "What are you staring at me for? There's nothing on my face." Lei Fan stretched out his hand to rub at his chin and said with a frown on his face, "The other party's goal is obviously not to allow the northern frontier to continue developing at such a rapid pace. At the same time, they do not intend to let us have an easy time as well. What we can be sure of at the moment is that in order to complete the assassination of Su Wu, the other party's plan has involved an unknown number of spies and a large number of strategists in order to be able to adapt to the current situation and bring the conflict onto us. However, if Xiong Wujuan starts an all-out war with us, the other party will definitely not be able to obtain any benefits. After all, the Black Snake has the Hengduan mountain range behind it. It is impossible for the other party to occupy the northern frontier's territory. Even if it does, it is impossible for them to monopolize the Fey trade like the Black Snake. To put it bluntly, even if the other party is also a beast king in the Hengduan mountain range, if the caravan wants to enter the Hengduan mountain range, it will still have to pass through the Black Snake's territory. It will also be the same if they want to transport Feys out from there. Hu Yan's eyes revealed a look of contemplation. At the same time, he continued the conversation. Therefore, this means that the other party is completely harming others without benefiting themselves. They want to use this matter to disgust us. Now, the only thing I can be sure of is that the other party is definitely our enemy. Moreover, it is the kind that has a blood feud. The city lord with the Thunderlord's face did not think as much as the other two. He only spread out his hands and smiled. Therefore, only you, the Black Snake, have so many enemies. Lei Fan was the new city lord who had been parachuted in. He did not have any connections in the northern frontier, let alone being targeted by any enemies. As for the other 6 city lords, each one of them was more of a hooligan than the other. Other than caring about their own territories, they spent the rest of their time eating and waiting for death. It was even more impossible for them to have any enemies. Even if there were enemies, the other party would not waste so much effort to set up a trap just to disgust him in the end. After thinking about it, the only one among them who could have such an enemy was the Black Snake. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He had not thought of this before, but now that he thought about it, he really did have a suspect. Even if it was a great faction that the Xinwu dynasty could not afford to offend, they would not spend so much effort to set up a trap just to disgust him. Therefore, the other party must have set up a trap to cause the northern frontier to enter a period of chaotic war. They must have some way to reap enough benefits or to complete revenge. There were 2 factions that fulfilled these 2 conditions. The faction behind the Fire Kirin was more likely. After all, the other party might still have demonic beasts in the Hengduan mountain range. If they could eat the fruits of Lin Yuan's labor, it would not matter even if they could not control the Hengduan mountain range in a short period of time. With the existence of monopolizing the business of spiritual items, the demonic beasts that controlled the northern frontier would soon become an important existence in the demonic beast palace. Just this little benefit was enough for them to be jealous. Then there was the remaining members of the Jiao clan. After all, the reason why the Jiao clan could survive until now was because of the support from the demonic beasts in the Hengduan mountain range. Otherwise, how could they survive under the Xinwu dynasty for so many years? The northern frontier was like a nest for the remaining members of the Jiao clan. But now, Lin Yuan and his Demon Emperor Association had dealt a heavy blow to the remaining members of the Jiao clan. In a short period of time, almost all the remaining members of the Jiao clan had been forced to migrate to other strongholds. Although they were temporarily safe, they had also lost contact with the Hengduan mountain range. Such a huge organization was just sitting around and eating, and would soon collapse on its own. However, the remaining members of the Jiao clan might not have the ability to set up such a huge trap. Therefore, Lin Yuan was more inclined to believe that the existence that was secretly targeting him was the faction behind the Fire Kirin. When it rains, it pours. This sentence was vividly interpreted in Lin Yuan's heart. The trouble with Xiong Wujuan and the embroidered uniform guards had not been resolved, and now another mastermind had appeared. Have you guessed who it is? Lei Fan saw the slight change in Lin Yuan's eyes and could not help but open his mouth to ask. This kind of feeling of being plotted against by others was indeed unpleasant. If they could not even find out who the mastermind was, it would be too depressing. Even if they could not take revenge in a short period of time, they should at least know what kind of existences their opponents were, right? This way they would be able to be more vigilant, lest they end up like Su Wu and die without knowing why. I have some clues, but I am still not sure of the other party's identity. Furthermore, I have not come into contact with them. I will go back and ask. If there is any news that is worth sharing, I will let you all know immediately. Lin Yuan nodded slightly, and the solemn look in his heterochromatic eyes began to recede. Chapter 290. It was nighttime. Horses galloped out of Shunning City one after another. Teams of knights in bright armor held swords and sabers in their hands and rushed to Xiongwujuan's camp like a torrent. Everyone's movements were almost uniform, and there was a touch of resoluteness in their eyes. The previous battles were almost all handled by the evil beasts, but tonight's night attack was a battle led by human beings. This was also the first real battle since the establishment of the Beijing Guard Army. Almost everyone rushed to the front line with the idea that they could not lose even if they had to risk their lives. After all, although the leaders of the northern frontier were the evil beasts, the relationship between human beings and the evil beasts was only a cooperative relationship. If the military power of the northern frontier could not be established, they could only accept the protection of the evil beasts in the future, and the human side would fall into a disadvantageous position. This battle was not only to protect the northern frontier, but also to fight for a better life in the future. On the other hand, the guardians of the northern region did not intend to catch the enemy off guard in the first place, so they did not deliberately conceal their voices. Therefore, before they appeared in the sight of Xiongwujuan's outpost, Xiongwujuan already knew that the humans in Shunning City had taken the initiative to attack them. Because of the death of General Su Wu, the Xiongwujuan's army, who had been suppressing their anger for a long time, did not have the slightest intention to retreat in the face of the enemy's active provocation. Pairs of sharp eyes lit up in the darkness, and swords had already been unsheathed. Their fighting spirit was not inferior to that of the guard army of the northern frontier, who was determined to prove themselves. The vanguards of the two sides quickly clashed. There were almost no tactics or strategies to speak of. They had directly returned to the primitive warfare where people were face to face. If you gave me a stab, I would immediately return the stab as long as I didn't die. It was a desperate state of fighting. Broken limbs flew everywhere, and blood was constantly gushing out, almost dyeing the ground red. Bodies fell down one after another, and the soldiers behind rushed up dauntlessly. The battle had just begun, but it had already entered a state of anxiety. The eyes of the two sides turned red, and they kept waving their weapons to kill the enemy in front of them, and then continued to move forward to find the next enemy until they fell down. Meanwhile, the young lieutenant who was still in Xiongwujuan's camp rubbed his chin and murmured, "If Black Snake cannot beat Xiongwujuan into submission tonight, then starting tomorrow Xiongwujuan will start to divide his forces. Of the 3 million soldiers, he will release at least 1,200,000. The rest will continue to stay here to confront Black Snake. The released soldiers will burn, kill, and pillage the northern frontier that is completely defenseless. Even if they cannot break the fighting spirit of Black Snake and his subordinates, they will at least make all of Black Snake's efforts in this period of time go to waste." As his gaze swept across the sand table one by one, the mocking look in the young lieutenant's eyes became more and more intense. The organization had investigated the mysterious Black Snake before and came to a similar conclusion as Zhang Xiu. They all believed that the Black Snake was a smokescreen thrown out by the Shifter Emperor. However, as the absolute executor of the Shifter Emperor's orders, the Black Snake was an existence that could not be underestimated. However, the current situation was so bad. How could the Black Snake break out of this situation? The young lieutenant began to think carefully about the Black Snake's thoughts. In the end, he still believed that if the Black Snake could not break Xiongwujuan's courage today and scare them into thinking that they could only feel safe by sticking together, then the loser of this game was destined to be the Black Snake. The total number of people on both sides was close to 5 million. However, in the eyes of the young lieutenant, this was just a game. A game where he represented the force behind him to greet the Black Snake. Xiongwujuan's military strength is nearly 3 times more than the Black Snake's. If the Black Snake's subordinates are all monsters, then this difference in military strength can naturally be ignored. However, after the previous few battles, the monsters in the periphery of the Hengduan mountain range were almost wiped out. It would take at least 1 or 2 years for them to recover. As for the monsters in the vicinity after the battle, naturally, they would not be under the command of the Monster King Court. Even if they did not evacuate without the order of the Monster King Court, these monsters would not be able to leave the Hengduan mountain range. It seems that the only way out for our Monster King is to gather all the troops tonight and directly launch an attack on Xiongwujuan, right? But in this way it is hard to say whether the Black Snake can win or not. Even if it wins, it will be a Pyrrhic victory. As long as I prepare in advance and gather the defeated soldiers of Xiongwujuan in advance, I can take advantage of the Black Snake's carelessness and directly launch a counterattack. Maybe I can directly behead the Black Snake. Yes, I understand. I will not be impulsive. The Black Snake is just a smoke bomb. Our purpose is still to find the monster king behind the black snake. Yes, I have never dared to forget the teachings of the organization. Please rest assured, I will definitely complete this mission successfully and give a satisfactory answer to the higher-ups. The young lieutenant's voice rang out once again. However, this time, his tone was filled with respect as if he was reporting to an incredible existence. It is not necessary to charge with the whole army. After all, only a reckless man likes to charge without thinking. My snake prefers a more stable fighting style. Suddenly, a discordant voice suddenly interrupted the young lieutenant's soliloquy. At this moment, the young lieutenant who was holding a yellow talisman turned his head with a blank face. He just happened to see the black snake that was suspected to be the monster king in the intelligence report standing at the entrance of the tent yawning. Moreover, he did not know how long it had been there. If it had not suddenly opened its mouth to speak, the young lieutenant really did not know that he had been discovered by the enemy. The warning array that he had set up around him did not respond at all. It was as if the black snake had already been here before the array was set up. You. The young lieutenant pointed at the black snake and could not say a word for a long time. He could not imagine that the things he had done before were so secretive that even Xiong Wujuan did not suspect him. How did this black snake find him directly? Lin Yuan yawned, and a hint of ridicule flashed through his heterochromatic eyes. He sneered and said, "You want the entire northern frontier to fall into chaos. Then, before the war began, you began to think about how to persuade Su Wu to divide the army, then assassinate Su Wu, and then pour the dirty water on us so that Xiong Wujuan would fight with us to the end. Although you didn't expect that Su Wu would be defeated by me on the first day of the war, that's why you jumped out in a panic to suggest a strategy to divide the troops so as to pave the way for the next steps. From the current results, you have succeeded." Chapter 291. The corner of the young lieutenant's mouth twitched slightly. Of course, he knew that his operation had been successful so far. However, he still wanted to know why the Black Serpent had locked onto him, and why the Black Serpent could freely enter and exit the Xiong Wujuan camp without being discovered. Also, what was up with his alerting array? Thinking of this, he lowered his head again and looked at his alerting array. He still couldn't find any problems. The array was still operating normally, but there was nothing within its monitoring range. It was as if the Black Serpent in front of him didn't exist at all. The other aspects are not bad, but it's a pity that your plan is too stupid. From the moment you started the operation, you exposed a fatal flaw, and you still haven't figured out this flaw. So, you're still staying in the Xiong Wujuan camp trying to remotely command this battle, right? Although there are many mercenaries and demon slayers in the Xiong Wujuan camp, you have to know that these people can only obey all the military operations of the Xiong Wujuan camp. After all, no matter how good and tempting the suggestion of a bunch of golden hounds sounded, it could still become a trap for the enemy to deal a fatal blow to them. So, if you want to carry out the plan of dividing the troops, you have to have a few people who have a say in the Xiong Wujuan camp. However, the Xiong Wujuan camp is a whole army that was transferred from the South Sea battlefield, and its organization is well preserved. Even if it's a defeated army, their status is actually not much higher than those mercenaries. So, you can only temporarily bribe some higher-ups in the Xiong Wujuan camp and arrange your own people. Because what you want to do is too sensitive, it's impossible to get the support of the Shenwu dynasty. Even if the Shenwu dynasty knows about this after the fact, they will definitely hold the higher-ups of the Xiong Wujuan camp accountable. So, even if you bribe these people, it's useless. At most, they will be assisting, but they will definitely not take the lead in this matter. So, it's necessary to arrange one of your own people. However, because of the lack of time, this person's status will definitely not be too high. The lieutenant, and the like are probably already dead. Since the position is not high, for the sake of rationality, this person is obviously a young man. After all, an outstanding young man will easily be taken care of by his seniors. So, those higher-ups who are assisting you will have a reason to leave. Wasn't that right? Because of this, I narrowed down the scope of my target once again. There weren't many young people who joined the Xiong Wujuan recently, and you were the only one whose military rank was suddenly raised. Now that I think about it, if you guys had considered this point in your plan, and had promoted a few more smoke bombs, wouldn't I have been blinded by it? Who knows, I might really have to bet everything tonight to determine the victor between me and Xiong Wujuan. Lin Yuan said slowly as he coiled his snake body. A cold light flickered in his heterochromatic eyes. The young lieutenant scratched his head as his eyes turned bloodshot. Although this operation used a lot of the organization's spies and connections, and even spent a lot of resources to get him the rank of lieutenant, as the executor of this operation he was also the planner of this operation. After all, no one expected an existence thousands of miles away to be able to understand every move here and change the operation plan at any time. As long as he gave a general direction, there would be countless strategists to help him perfect and fix the plan. So, until the appearance of the Black Snake, he felt that there was no mistake in his operation. But now that the Black Snake slowly pointed out the most fatal flaw in his plan, it suddenly made him feel that he was extremely stupid. So, it turned out that he had exposed himself from the beginning? Could it be that his IQ was even lower than a demon beast hiding in the Hengduan mountain range? The young lieutenant forcibly expelled the complicated emotions from his mind and said with a gloomy face, "Even if you know everything, what's the use? There's already a fight outside. Black Snake, as the most famous warmonger in the Hengduan mountain range, you should be very clear about the terrifying power of war, right? As long as you're slightly agitated, you'll completely lose control and fall into a state of slaughter. Now, let alone you, even if you and the higher-ups of Jianghu go out together, you won't be able to stop the people outside." Speaking of this, the young lieutenant's eyes had already revealed a touch of madness. He was clear about his own strength, so he didn't even bother to struggle. After being caught red-handed by the Black Snake, he could only choose to die a little more painfully or die a little more quickly. In addition to the previous shame of being crushed by a demon beast in terms of IQ, he only wanted to see the Black Snake suffer at this moment. So, he didn't even consider what terrible things would happen to him after the Black Snake was angered by him. He had already spat out some ridiculing and mocking words. "You seem to have misunderstood something." Lin Yuan tilted his head and sneered, "I don't think I've ever said that I don't want them to fight, right? The northern frontier has already broken away from the control of the Shenwu dynasty. Even without Xiongwu, there will be other troops to quell the chaos. So this war will break out sooner or later. So why should I stop them?" Speaking of this, Lin Yuan slowly raised his chin and said coldly, "My purpose is just to find a bastard like you who is causing trouble behind the scenes, and then mercilessly tear you to pieces." Lin Yuan really couldn't think of any reason to stop the war to show the muscles of the northern frontier. After this war, the northern frontier could even justifiably break away from the control of the Shenwu dynasty. From then on, it would become a free country independent of the seven great empires. The battle cries came from afar. Obviously, the Beijing Guard army had already killed their way in from outside the camp. After all, Xiongwu was just holding back his anger, but the Northern Frontier Guard army was fighting for a better life in the future. Both sides had different ideologies, so naturally their fighting strength couldn't be compared. More than 3 million Xiongwu soldiers were actually completely suppressed by more than 600,000 Northern Frontier Guard army at this moment, and even began to retreat. If this scene was seen by outsiders, they would definitely not believe that this was a battle between humans. After all, this kind of terrifying casualty ratio and offensive momentum could only be achieved by demon beasts fighting humans in the wilderness. "I've guessed so much about your plan. Why don't you take a guess? The demon beasts didn't participate in this battle, so what are they doing? If you guess it, there will be a reward." Lin Yuan's low voice sounded again, like a devil whispering in the darkness, instantly planting the seed of fear in the young lieutenant's heart. Chapter 292. The young lieutenant did not have any intention of speaking to Lin Yuan as he hugged his head with both hands and turned around to run in a certain direction. Lin Yuan followed the young lieutenant out of the tent slowly, his cold eyes looking at the back of the young lieutenant who was gradually disappearing into the darkness. His eyes flashed with a hint of mockery, and with a shake of his body, he turned into specks of starlight and disappeared into the heavens and earth. This was an ability that he had obtained from visualizing the stellar chart. It was not very useful and could only temporarily project Lin Yuan into an area illuminated by starlight. However, Lin Yuan could not see what was happening there and could only hear what was being said there. Therefore, Lin Yuan was basically relying on the image created by his sense of smell to communicate with the other party. If the distance was out of the range of the image created by his sense of smell, then Lin Yuan could only play along with the other party. Moreover, a projection was just a projection and could not come into contact with anything. Even if it received a blow, it would dissipate immediately. Therefore, to Lin Yuan this ability was really not very useful. "Have you confirmed the identity of the other party?" Lei Fan turned his head sideways to look at Lin Yuan and asked again. When he left his family, he thought that the northern frontier and the outer regions of the Hengduan Mountains were just a small piece of land, and could only be used as a springboard for him. But after entering this territory, Lei Fan realized that his previous view was completely wrong. If he continued to have such thoughts of playing games, he might end up like Su Wu one day. I'm not sure yet. However, that fellow has been followed. Lin Yuan's strange-colored eyes did not have any ripples, and he just replied calmly. What he had said before, other than some reasonable guesses, was basically just to trick the other party. After all, the Xiong Warmi was fighting with the Northern Frontiers guards outside. Not only did a lieutenant not participate in the battle, he was even hiding in his own tent to study the battle sand table. This was the biggest factor that Lin Yuan was able to confirm the other party's identity. After all, this fellow's actions were completely different from a lieutenant who only knew how to charge into the enemy's ranks and gain battle merits to see if he could improve further. It was just that his last words were to make the other party take the initiative to bring his demonic beasts to the think tank. No matter how good the other party's mental fortitude was, they would still panic under such circumstances. It was just like if someone told you that your safe had been broken open. Even if you knew that your safe was well preserved and had a very high level of security, you would still subconsciously panic. Moreover, under this feeling of panic, you would run to the place where your safe was stored to take a look. Only after confirming that it was safe would you heave a sigh of relief. Lin Yuan wanted to be the one who told him that the safe had been broken open. This way, the other party would take the initiative to bring Lin Yuan's informants to find out his accomplices. And among these people, most of them should be the brains who had helped him fill in the gaps in this operation plan. If it was a group of spies similar to the embroidered guard or soldiers captured from the front line, Lin Yuan really had no interest in interrogating them. But for a group of think tanks, Lin Yuan knew very well that as long as he used a little means, there would be people among these guys who could not bear to stand up and tell him everything they knew. After all, they were smart people. In the eyes of these third-rate strategists who thought themselves to be smart, other than their own lives, the lives of others were just bargaining chips. Even if the organization behind them was incomparably terrifying, as long as Lin Yuan didn't want to get any crucial information out of them, he could squeeze out everything they knew bit by bit like squeezing toothpaste. Not cooperating? That didn't matter. Of course, it was impossible to send them back to be tortured. Lin Yuan wouldn't do such a degrading thing. However, for these people who had already revealed some secrets but were unwilling to continue cooperating, Lin Yuan's choice was to directly let them go. For all the powers in the Jianghu continent, the greatest taboo was for their own members to reveal some secrets of their organization to others. Thus, once they left Lin Yuan's protection, these people's fates wouldn't be good. Lin Yuan's mood also relaxed a little after he grasped these guys tightly. At the same time, the Northern Frontiers Guard Corps had already completely suppressed Xiong Wujuan. Under the continuous attacks, Xiong Wujuan was like a deflated balloon. He didn't even have the slightest thought of rebounding. There were even some mercenaries who tore off their own identity as Xiong Wujuan's side and took the initiative to join the Northern Frontiers Guard Corps' follow-up cleanup plan. The destruction of more than 3 million people, even for the huge Shenwu dynasty, was not a small loss. After all, other than the battle with the two great empires, the previous battle between the Shenwu dynasty and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas didn't even have such a large-scale battle. Even the entire South Sea battlefield didn't have more than 3 million people. Brothers, we won. The city lord, who was leading the charge, cut down the flag beside him with his sword. At the same time, he heavily punched his chest with his right fist, and at the same time, he let out a loud roar from his mouth. More than 600,000 people defeated more than 3 million people. What kind of glorious battle record was this? He personally led the troops to such a battle record. If there was a list of famous generals in the Jianghu continent, the city lord even believed that he could directly enter the top 10. The explosive strength of both sides was different. The Northern Frontiers Guard Corps had a perfect command system. Being able to suppress the Xiong Wujuan was also within Lin Yuan's expectations. However, Lin Yuan completely didn't expect that the Xiong Wujuan would be so weak after splitting up the troops. The commanders of the various troops were simply unwilling to cooperate with their brother troops. Almost all of them were fighting on their own. More than 3 million people were surrounded by more than 600,000 people, and even gradually nibbled away at them. This kind of almost impossible tactical attack was actually completed. This also made Lin Yuan once again understand the importance of only having one voice in a force. because the current him was far from safe. The forces around him seemed strong, but other than Mo Luo and this batch of demonic beasts created by the system, and Wan Yu who was forced to live under his command due to the pressure brought by the Lord, Lin Yuan basically didn't have many of his own subordinates. If something were to happen to him, he was afraid that everything that he had painstakingly built up would instantly collapse in an instant. There wouldn't even be a trace of protection left for him. He had to get rid of those strange voices before his enemies discovered his fatal weakness. Chapter 293. The northern frontier was a battlefield with millions of people. It wasn't a big battlefield, but it wasn't small either. Therefore, the Xinwu dynasty had been secretly paying attention to the situation of this battle. Even though the embroidered uniform guards were almost wiped out by Lin Yuan, Lei Qiuxing was still able to accurately grasp the changes in the northern frontier battlefield. Therefore, not long after the Xiong Wujuan's crushing defeat, it caused a huge uproar in the imperial capital of the Xinwu dynasty. The aristocratic families began to covet the considerable income of the northern frontier every year. They knew very well that if they were in charge of the northern frontier, they wouldn't be able to allocate the resources of the entire Hengduan mountain range like Black Snake and allow all their partners to obtain what they wanted. Therefore, they were destined to be unable to do this business. However, this didn't stop the aristocratic families from becoming restless. Although there weren't many monopolies, it wasn't impossible for them to do it if they wanted to. Especially now that the Xinwu dynasty's vitality had been greatly damaged, it was impossible for them not to have any thoughts about it. Although there were many aristocratic families in the Xinwu dynasty and the power they held wasn't weak, no one dared to provoke the emperor god. After all, there were many examples. Even if the descendants of the Lei family did such a thing, Lei Qiuxing definitely wouldn't let them off easily. But now, a successful example had appeared. The Xiong Wujuan's army of more than 3 million people was already the largest military force that the Xinwu dynasty could mobilize. If they were to mobilize a permanent army similar to the Xiong Wujuan's army and march towards the northern frontier, then the other battlefields of the Xinwu dynasty might directly collapse. In addition, the Xinwu dynasty was currently at war everywhere. Every time a war report came back, it would constantly say that the war was in a stalemate. Every time a list of casualties was sent back along with grief, it would also force the emperor god to take out a large sum of money from the national treasury for the families of the deceased to ensure that they could live peacefully for the rest of their lives. Not to mention organizing an army similar to the Xiong Wujuan's army, even if they used the most inferior equipment, the Xinwu dynasty really couldn't afford it. This also meant that they had more room to maneuver. As long as they didn't do anything too overboard, even if they secretly occupied some territory or monopolized some business, the Xinwu dynasty would turn a blind eye to their overstepping their boundaries. The demonic beasts in the northern frontier hadn't been dealt with yet. How could they have the time to deal with these aristocratic families? It wasn't just the aristocratic families in the Xinwu dynasty who were thinking about this. Similarly, Lei Qiuxing, who had always harbored the intention to kill Black Snake, couldn't help but start to ponder at this moment. Was his attitude towards Black Snake really wrong? The failure to quell the rebellion in the northern frontier meant that the royal family's control over the Xinwu dynasty's territory had greatly decreased. Although Lei Qiuxing still had the confidence to get the Xinwu dynasty back on the right track, that would be a matter of a few years later. With Black Snake's current growth speed, how terrifying would Black Snake be in a few years' time? Zhang Xiu, what do you think? Lei Qiuxing's gaze fell on Zhang Xiu. At this moment, Zhang Xiu, who had killed countless people and controlled the largest spy agency in the Xinwu dynasty, was sitting lazily at a table in the imperial study. He didn't have the feeling of a subject meeting the emperor at all. Instead, it was like two old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years were chatting. Zhang Xiu shrugged his shoulders and a light flashed in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "In my humble opinion, why don't the emperor issue an imperial edict and let the lord of Shunning City be conferred the title of king? This way, not only can we ensure that the northern frontier is still under the Xinwu dynasty's control, but even if Black Snake wants to eliminate existences that threaten him, he will have to consider Hu Yan's identity as the northern frontier king. Once he takes action, we will have a reason to call on the other 6 empires to suppress Black Snake together." Black Snake's Fey monopoly business was too popular, so popular that everyone wanted a share of the profits. However, Black Snake's Fey monopoly wasn't only able to generate huge profits, but it was also a huge threat to the Xinwu dynasty. If they didn't get rid of Black Snake's Fey monopoly business as soon as possible, even Lei Qiuxing would have to speak to Black Snake submissively. Otherwise, once Black Snake cut off the Xinwu dynasty's Fey supply, they wouldn't be able to do anything. The entire Xinwu dynasty's national strength would be greatly weakened. Conferred the title of king? Lei Qiuxing's face showed that he wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. Back then, he had been able to be placed in an important position under the condemned Star Sea because the two of them had a strong desire to control their own things. Thus, when Black Snake tried to take control of the northern frontier, Lei Qiuxing's first reaction was to mobilize the only troops he could mobilize and directly suppress Black Snake in the northern frontier. In the end, the rebellion had failed. Not only did he lose the only military force he could mobilize, but he also had to admit that the northern frontier had a special status in the Xinwu dynasty. This sullen feeling made him extremely uncomfortable, but he had to admit that this was the best way to deal with it at the moment. Zhang Xiu's lips curled up slightly and he sneered. Being conferred the title of king is just the beginning. Power is a fatal poppy. Once Hu Yan accepts the title of Northern Frontier King, he will want more, such as hereditary succession. We only need to stay in the imperial capital and we can watch Hu Yan fight with Black Snake for power. Isn't that perfect? If a person had enough merits, they could indeed be conferred the title of king. However, according to the laws of the Jianghu continent, the title of vassal king could not be hereditary. After every generation, the title would automatically drop by one level. If they could obtain the imperial edict of hereditary succession, then every generation of the Hu family in the northern frontier would become the king of the northern frontier. A title might not seem like much, but to an aristocratic family like the Hu family, it was a fatal temptation. What if Hu Yan doesn't accept it? Lei Qiuxing's eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule, but he deliberately asked this question. It is impossible for Hu Yan not to accept it. Black Snake wants to get rid of him. I can see that, so can he. If we confer the title of king of the northern frontier to him, it is not just to give him honor, but to him, it is also a life-saving talisman. Zhang Xiu took a deep breath and said slowly. Furthermore, even if Hu Yan wants to die, we can just confer the title to someone else. Even if they are not willing to accept it, Black Snake will force them to accept it. After all, the structure of the 7 great empires has not changed for so many years. Even if we are willing, the other 6 great empires will not allow another new power to appear in the Jianghu continent. Chapter 294. 4 days later. A piece of shocking news came out from the Xinwu dynasty's imperial capital. Lei Qiuxing, who was used to being overbearing and did not even give face to the top powers of the Jianghu continent, was actually terrified. An imperial edict conferring the title of king of the northern frontier was sent out from the imperial capital. It only took 7 days for it to reach the mayor's mansion in Shanning City. Even though the Xinwu dynasty lost to the Northern Frontier Guard Corps, it was still one of the 7 great empires of the Jianghu continent. The imperial edict conferring the title of king was still valid. As long as Hu Yan accepted the edict, all the previous grievances between the two sides could be written off. The northern frontier would still be under the rule of the Xinwu dynasty, but they would still have the right to listen to orders. For an overbearing emperor like Lei Qiuxing, this imperial edict was already the biggest concession he could make. After all, once Hu Yan accepted the edict and became the king of the northern frontier, although the Xinwu dynasty still had ways to kill him, but at least for 10 years, as long as Hu Yan did not do anything excessive, the Xinwu dynasty would not be able to touch a single hair of his. Moreover, the king of the northern frontier could establish his own small court in the northern frontier. Except for the Xinwu dynasty, it was just like a new great empire. In terms of power, there was no difference at all. The only difference was the size of the territory. To an emperor in the Jianghu continent, a vassal was not like a vassal, but an ally with a cooperative relationship. Of course, this kind of monstrous power could only be maintained for 1 generation. When Hu Yan's son took over the banner of the Hu family from his hands, his title would only be duke. Although he would still be very noble, he would no longer have the power to establish a small court that was completely controlled by him. Otherwise, if the Xinwu dynasty found out, the Xinwu dynasty could directly turn him into a traitor. However, to Hu Yan, it didn't matter how long he could maintain his power. He only wanted to know if he should accept the imperial edict. This question was like a sharp blade hanging over his head. If it was the Hu Yan of the past, he would have been dancing with joy. But now he had to consider the Black Snake's thoughts before doing anything. If the black snake wasn't willing, then he might inexplicably die of a cold tomorrow after accepting the edict. A life-saving charm? Hu Yan had indeed thought of this, but after calming down he gave up on this idea. The black serpent never followed any rules when doing things. As a demonic beast, the black serpent indirectly controlled the northern frontier. It completely ignored the unwritten rules between the 7 dynasties and the Hengduan Mountains. Therefore, to the black serpent, a mere king of the northern frontier could be killed as it wished. Would the Xinwu dynasty dare to fall out with it at this time? If the Xinwu dynasty had the ability to fall out with the black serpent, then this imperial edict wouldn't have been sent to the northern frontier. At this time, countless pairs of eyes in the northern frontier were fixed on Hu Yan and the entire Hu family. After all, before the imperial edict appeared, everyone was on the same side. The 7 city lords on the border worked together with the black serpent and became a thorn in the side of the Xinwu dynasty. However, at this moment, the status of the remaining 6 city lords didn't change, but Hu Yan had a new choice. Should he accept or give up? It had to be said that Xin Xiu was a top-notch expert at playing tricks. When Zhang Shi appeared, it had already caused everyone in the northern frontier to panic. They were afraid that when they woke up, the leader of the embroidered uniform guard with brilliant battle records would be standing at their bedside and looking at them with a smile that wasn't a smile. And now, although Zhang Xiu didn't take the time to personally go to the northern frontier, he came up with a second strategy. On the surface, it seemed like he was admitting defeat and conciliating, but it caused the originally united northern frontier city lords to have ulterior motives. The originally deep-rooted alliance collapsed at this moment, and everyone began to suspect and be on guard against each other. If the Xinwu dynasty still had the strength to attack at this time, although the Northern Frontier Guard Corps would still gather, their speed would definitely not be as fast as before. Just like Lei Qiuxing admitting defeat, the arrogant and despotic Black Snake actually remained silent on this matter. Not to mention taking the initiative to speak up, even when Hu Yan sent people to search the Northern Frontier, they still couldn't find Black Snake. It was as if he wanted to see Hu Yan's choice. The mental torture was almost driving Hu Yan crazy. However, in the huge northern frontier, there wasn't even a single person who could help him resolve this problem. Just as Hu Yan was vexed, the other 6 city lords had already secretly gathered together. Lei Fan tidied up his collar and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, the imperial edict of bestowment is just a scheme of the Xinwu dynasty. As long as we don't openly rebel, the other 6 dynasties will be happy to see it happen. After all, the existence of our northern frontier has greatly hindered the Xinwu dynasty's recovery speed. Even if we become the king of the northern frontier, we are still the subjects of the Xinwu dynasty. When the time comes, if the imperial capital sends people to ask us to pay taxes, then there will be a huge expenditure on our account." A city lord with a scholarly look narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Although I don't know how Lord Black Demon Emperor came up with those reforms and policies, but in my opinion, Lord Demon Emperor's merit is now, and the benefits are in the future. The only flaw is that our current situation is too far away from Lord Demon Emperor's vision. We need to invest a huge amount of money and resources to implement the reforms. Therefore, I think that we should avoid unnecessary expenditure if we can." A middle-aged city lord with a mustache nodded and continued the conversation. "Moreover, we have enough strength, which is why the Xinwu dynasty wants to bestow the title of king to the northern frontier. However, if we reject it now, the other 6 dynasties might even secretly give us some support. On the contrary, if we give up now, the advantages will outweigh the disadvantages." From the words and actions of the 6 city lords, they didn't put the Xinwu dynasty in their eyes at all. They didn't have the panic and fear when Xiongwu's army arrived at their city a few days ago. They even resisted the Xinwu dynasty from the inside out. Although they knew that their existence was the biggest obstacle to the Black Snake's establishment, no matter how nice the Xinwu dynasty made it sound, once the Xinwu dynasty recovered from this turmoil, they would definitely not let these traitors off. Otherwise, wouldn't anyone be able to be a traitor? Under the Black Snake's command, as long as they were careful, they wouldn't lose their lives because of a small matter. However, under the rule of the Xinwu dynasty, they were all unforgivable people. If they made a slight mistake, not only would they lose their lives, they might even bring disaster to their entire family. Chapter 295. Since everyone's opinion is the same, then we will not delay any longer. The 6 of us will go directly to Shunning City to tell City Lord Hu of our opinion. After all, if the decision is made like this, then the longer we delay this matter, the more disadvantageous it will be for us. Lei Fan made the final decision, ending this discussion where everyone was of the same opinion. Now, all the big and small forces within the Shenwu dynasty were on the lookout. Once the northern frontier showed a clear attitude of refusing to be conferred the title of king, then very quickly the aristocratic families and even the sects would take action. Taking advantage of the fact that the Shenwu dynasty was temporarily unable to suppress them, they would quickly divide up the territories of the Shenwu dynasty and directly reduce the influence of the Lei imperial family to the lowest. But if the northern frontier accepted the title of king, it would be a heart-strengthening drug for the Shenwu dynasty. After all, once the two sides started to cooperate, then the existence that jumped out and tried to eat the meat would become the opponent of the northern frontier. Otherwise, how could the Shenwu dynasty write off the things that happened in the northern frontier? The Shenwu dynasty indeed did not have the spare strength to suppress them. But the northern frontier had them. Even if the demonic beasts in the northern frontier could not fight, the 600,000 northern frontier guards were still a strong force. In addition, many of these 600,000 people were veterans of the previous 7 border cities. They had battled with the demonic beasts for many years. In terms of combat experience, they were definitely not inferior to any of the elite troops of the Shenwu dynasty. Crushing those young masters raised by the aristocratic families would not be a problem at all. And the longer the northern frontier dragged on, the more fickle the people would be. Some people would even think that the northern frontier was hesitating. Even if they rejected the enlistment of the Shenwu dynasty in the end, the decision-makers of the northern frontier had also hesitated. Who knew when they would directly join forces with the Shenwu dynasty and start to deal with them? The longer this dragged on, the more potential allies the northern frontier would lose. Yo, everyone is here? What are you guys discussing? Suddenly, Lin Yuan's voice rang out from the gathering hall of the 6 city lords. The 6 city lords looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. After all, they had privately discussed this matter for the sake of forming a united front. However, before the discussion ended, no one dared to say that they were certain of the result. Even though they knew that joining the Shenwu dynasty would not bring them any benefits, working under the Black Snake was also extremely dangerous. Furthermore, working under a demonic beast would make it difficult for them to move around the Tianwu continent in the future. Therefore, the 6 city lords all chose to conceal the news. After disguising themselves many times, they quietly gathered in this secret room to discuss. No one had expected that the Black Snake would be able to find them so accurately. No one was stupid enough to believe that the Black Snake had just arrived here and did not know anything about what they were discussing. There were even a few city lords who had a layer of cold sweat on their backs. In truth, their hearts were more inclined towards the Shenwu dynasty. However, everyone's opinions were important and under the circumstances, they could only agree with a few words. They did not expect that the Black Snake would be able to hear their conversation. At that moment they were already thinking in their hearts. If the result of their discussion was to betray the Black Snake, then at this moment. After that, they did not dare to think any further. However, there was no doubt that the current them had just brushed shoulders with death. Lei Fan's mouth curled up slightly as he laughed bitterly. Aren't you asking the obvious? Of course it's the conferment of the Northern Frontier King. We intend to reject the goodwill of the Shenwu dynasty. This way we will be safer. No need. Lin Yuan shook his huge snake head and a strange look flashed past his eyes as he said solemnly. The Shenwu dynasty no longer has the time to care about us. Compared to us, they have an even stronger enemy. As his voice fell, the eyes of the 6 city lords all fell on Lin Yuan. The Shenwu dynasty's biggest enemies now were the Qingjiang dynasty and the Shuangjin dynasty. As long as the Shenwu dynasty was willing to admit defeat in this war and cede some land to the 2 dynasties, the war would soon be over. Then why did the Black Snake say that an even stronger enemy had appeared in the Shenwu dynasty? Could it be that the power behind the Shenwu dynasty could not take this lying down and had completely shed all pretense of cordiality and was going to fight against the Shenwu dynasty personally? That should not be so, right? The Qingping king has rebelled. Lin Yuan paused as Huan Huan said a piece of important news. The Qingping king Lei Qiuming was Lei Qiuxing's twin brother. Whether it was in terms of scheming or cultivation aptitude, he was not inferior to Lei Qiuxing. If it was not because Lei Qiuxing was deeply trusted by Zhou Xinghai and received the cultivation resources of the Shenwu dynasty, which allowed him to step into the Heaven Star realm earlier, it was hard to say whether the throne of the Shenwu dynasty would be Lei Qiuxing or Lei Qiuxing. In addition, even if Lei Qiuming did not sit on the throne, he relied on his own abilities to gather an army of about 3 million people. Before the Xinwu dynasty was established, he used an irresistible force to take down the southern part of the Wanjian dynasty. Later on, he was even conferred the title of Qingpeng King. Although his military power and territory had been weakened by a lot, Lei Qiuming's rallying power within the Xinwu dynasty was still very terrifying. He could pull out an army of 1 million people at any time and was seen as one of the biggest security threats of the Xinwu dynasty. Qingpeng King, shouldn't be that bad, right? The city lord narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "If Qingpeng King wants to rebel, why wait until today? If Lei Qiuming really had disloyal thoughts, he would have rebelled long ago. It would not be the turn of the northern frontier to make the first move. Previously, when the situation was good, he did not rebel. Why would he suddenly have such thoughts now? It's true. It's not that Lei Qiuming wants to rebel, it's just that he has no other choice. After all, although Lei Qiuming has more than 10 children in his life, he only has one son who can be the successor. And at this moment, his son is sitting here with all of you. Tell me, how can Lei Qiuming not panic?" Lin Yuan said in a mocking tone. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than his father. When the imperial edict was issued, Lei Qiuming had already guessed that even if Hu Yen was willing to accept this edict, Lei Fan would still oppose it with all his might. In addition, there was a black snake with unknown intentions lurking at the side. So, rejecting the conferment was definitely something that would happen sooner or later. When something happened at the northern frontier, the Xinwu dynasty did not have the spare energy to deal with it. But when there were internal problems, the Xinwu dynasty was still able to solve them quickly. After all, the northern frontier was still a new mess. But those vassals and aristocratic families were all hidden dangers that had existed for a long time. It was impossible that the Xinwu dynasty did not have a backup plan. Chapter 296. According to the laws of the Xinwu dynasty, the heirs of the vassal kings were not allowed to remain in the vassal king's fief. They would all be sent to the imperial capital to receive education. From a young age, they would be instilled with the thought of being loyal to the imperial family, to the king. At the same time, this was to prevent the vassal kings from rebelling. After all, the heirs were all in the hands of the vassal kings. You couldn't possibly become immortal and immortal. Wouldn't it still have to be passed down to the next generation? It was very difficult for powerful cultivators to give birth to heirs, especially those who were intelligent, suitable to be groomed as heirs. To these vassal kings, that was an existence more important than their own lifeblood. Lei Qiuming may have over 10 children, but Lei Qiuming already had 3 concubines, not to mention those concubines and other reproductive tools. It was said that the beauties raised in Lei Qiuming's residence were not much inferior to Lei Qiushing's imperial harem. But Lei Qiuming was after all powerful, so he was given special treatment. Usually, he would stay in the imperial capital, and without a suitable reason, he would not take even half a step out of the city gates. After all, as a vassal king with over 1 million mercenaries, Lei Qiushing could not possibly not be on guard against him. So he could either send his son to the imperial capital, or stay in the imperial capital himself. There was no other choice. If there was any deviation, what awaited the Azure Cape royal territory would be the thunderous fury of the Xinwu dynasty. This time, after the imperial edict of coronation had been sent to the northern frontier, he had not received a reply from the northern frontier, so Lei Qiuming had panicked. It did not matter that Lei Fan had humiliated the Xinwu dynasty, as the Xinwu dynasty had only wanted to give it a try. But to Lei Qiuming, this was equivalent to being roasted on a fire by his own son. Lei Qiushing had suffered such a setback in the northern frontier, and his first reaction was that the northern frontier no longer belonged to him. Then, as Lei Fan's father, Lei Qiushing would definitely be the most resolute ally of the northern frontier. With the intention of eliminating all hidden dangers, Lei Qiushing would definitely not give Lei Qiushing a way out. Having thought this through, while the Xinwu dynasty was still waiting for the reply from the northern frontier, Lei Qiuming had secretly slipped out of the imperial capital under the cover of a group of men of sacrifice, and immediately activated his own rallying power to gather his old subordinates. Although the Xinwu dynasty's national power was not what it used to be, but it had still allowed Lei Qiuming to gather over 300,000 elite soldiers and strong generals. Moreover, he had unilaterally announced that the Azure Cape royal territory would be sealed off, and would not be participating in any operations of the Xinwu dynasty for the time being. Such an action, to call it an independent declaration of war, was not an exaggeration. So, to pin the label of rebellion on Lei Qiuming's head was not an injustice at all. After listening to Lin Yuan's narration, the corners of the eyes of all the city lords twitched slightly, and their gazes fell upon the calm face of Lei Fan. Although they had long known that this newly appointed city lord of the mountain-blocking city had an exceedingly high background, but they only knew that his surname was Lei, and that he was considered a relative of the imperial family. But no one would have thought that Lei Fan would be the only son of the Azure Cape King. To them, the position of city lord was already the pinnacle of power, but to Lei Fan it was just a game. Even if Lei Fan did not do anything, he would still be able to inherit the throne of the Azure Cape King in the future, becoming an existence that they could only look up to in this lifetime, and when they talked about him, their tone would be filled with respect. But who would have thought that a relative of the imperial family, who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, would be the existence that was most resistant to cooperating with the Xinwu dynasty? Lei Fan was also having a headache, and he stretched out his hand to rub the space between his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "It's all right, don't bother about it. My father just likes to cause trouble. Don't be fooled by how he is making a ruckus now. If things really go south, he might even be the vanguard of the crusade against the northern frontier. Nobody knows a son better than his father. Nobody knows a father better than his son." Lei Qiuming and Lei Qiusheng were blood brothers, and had the disposition of an ambitious and ruthless person. Now that he had the chance to take another step forward, Lei Qiuming would naturally grab hold of this opportunity. Although part of the reason was to protect his own life, but one could not deny his ambition. If not, he would have obediently stayed in the imperial capital. Could it be that Lei Qiusheng really dared to kill Lei Qiuming as a sacrifice? To put it bluntly, the current Xinwu dynasty could not withstand too many twists and turns, and Lei Qiuming's death was obviously beyond the limits of what the Xinwu dynasty could withstand. After all, he was a man who could casually summon an army of hundreds of thousands with just a wave of his hand. But as an ambitious and ruthless person, he would not place too much importance on relationships. If things really went south, Lei Qiuming would undoubtedly choose to shake hands and make peace with Lei Qiusheng, and give up on this son that he doted on so much. After all, Lei Qiuming was still in his prime, and as a Heaven Dipper realm cultivator he could at least live for a few more 100 years. If his son died he could just give birth to a few more. Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes turned, and he did not deny Lei Fan's thoughts. Such was the nature of ambitious and ruthless people. Asking them to give up what they already had would cause them heartache. But if they could obtain something better, these ambitious and ruthless people would not hesitate to exchange, as if they did not have any feelings for what they had in the past. There were quite a number of self-proclaimed ambitious and ruthless people, but those who could truly be considered as such, Lin Yuan had only met two. One was his blood feud in his previous life. Lin Yuan was not willing to recall the details, but if he could do it all over again he would never make an enemy out of such an existence. But since things had already come to this, even if Lin Yuan had come to a different world, he would not rest until the other party was dead. The other person who could be considered as an ambitious and ruthless person was the beast Lord Kirin, who had suppressed the Hengduan Mountains for hundreds of years. When he was young he had even plotted against the 7 great empires. This must have happened after the Wanjian dynasty was destroyed, and the remnants of the Jiao clan became a chess piece in the hands of the beast Lord Kirin to restrict the Xinwu dynasty. Other than the beast Lord Kirin himself, no one knew how many other similar arrangements he had prepared. Until now, although the beast Lord Kirin's strength was not enough, he still had the aura of a king. From the way he chose his successor for the sake of the stability of the Hengduan Mountains, he really did not hesitate to kill off all the other outstanding juniors. It might seem like a loss, but it would allow the Beast King to develop steadily. Alright, let's get back to the topic. Lin Yuan looked around and said expressionlessly, "I don't care about your opinions. I'm only here to inform you of one thing. The northern frontier has accepted the imperial edict. From today onwards, the 7 border cities will be ruled by Lei Fan. I only have one request. No matter what happens, the secret agents, officials, and army of the Xinwu dynasty are not allowed to infiltrate the northern frontier. If I find any of them, all of you will be punished." The city lord stood up abruptly, and there was a trace of shock in his eyes. After a moment of silence, the city lord clenched his teeth and said, "Demon Emperor, you should be very clear that accepting this imperial edict will do us more harm than good. Am I right?" Chapter 297. That's right. Lin Yuan nodded sincerely and didn't deny it. Then why? The city lord with a thunderous face almost roared out loud. As the commander who had led the team to defeat the Xiongwu, the city lord was undoubtedly the hero of the northern frontier. His reputation and status had greatly improved. However, this glory in the eyes of the people of the northern frontier was an unforgivable misdeed in the eyes of the Xinwu dynasty. The enemy's hero was the enemy's enemy. The city lord didn't even dare to imagine how he, the hero of the northern frontier, would be dealt with if the Xinwu dynasty really survived this hurdle. Because not only can the Xinwu dynasty not afford to fight, but I also can't afford to fight. Lin Yuan turned his heterochromatic eyes and looked at the city lord. He said in a deep voice, "There is still a faction secretly watching us. If the world is peaceful, they won't have an excuse to make a move. However, once the situation is chaotic, can you guarantee that those aristocratic families will target the Xinwu dynasty?" The human heart was the most sinister thing in this world. The profits of the northern frontier's monopoly on phase were too great. Even if there was a certain difficulty in operating it, it wasn't impossible to replicate. Lin Yuan secretly had the Demon the Arch Association to patrol the northern frontier. In the light, he had the 7 city lords overseeing. He also had the Hengduan mountain range backing him. Naturally, he could easily do this business well. However, to some truly powerful aristocratic families, their influence might not be inferior to Lin Yuan. Even if they couldn't circulate the goods of the 7 dynasties like Lin Yuan, just the monopoly of the phase that targeted the Xinwu dynasty was enough to make countless people jealous. Now, the Xinwu dynasty's situation was complicated. At first glance, it looked like a mess and no one was willing to take over. However, the northern frontier was different. Apart from facing the threat of the Fey beasts, it was no different from a huge gold mine. The cooperation between Lin Yuan, the Demon the Arch Association, and the 7 border cities was also reminding these people that although the Fey beasts hated humans, it wasn't impossible to bribe them. As long as enough benefits were given, it wasn't impossible to completely replicate Lin Yuan's current business model. Let alone the human side. It was the same even within the Hengduan mountain range. God knew how many Fey beasts were coveting Lin Yuan's position. If it wasn't for Subaru, the Fey beast clans would have started suppressing Lin Yuan. In order to maintain a good relationship with Subaru, even if Subaru didn't take the initiative to speak up for Lin Yuan still gave 20% of the profits to Subaru. That is also true. As a native of the northern frontier. As a native of the northern frontier. As a native of that. Me too. Lei Fan nodded his head as well. He knew very well who his backer was. Seeing his ally betraying him, Lei Gong City Lord felt uncomfortable in his heart. But on the surface, he could only sigh helplessly and said, "Yes, Wang Gang accepts the order." That's all. Meeting adjourned. Lin Yuan nodded his head and took the lead to wriggle his snake body and left. The next day, almost everyone who had their eyes on the northern frontier had entered a state of silence. After all, no one would have thought that the northern frontier who had the absolute advantage would actually choose to accept the Xinwu dynasty's imperial edict of bestowing king, just that the one to be bestowed the title was changed from Hu Yen to Lei Fan. To the Lei royal family, it was a good thing for their bloodline to become the king of the northern frontier. So, before Lei Qiuxing had even expressed his agreement, the imperial clan court, the various vassals, and even some of the side branches of the Lei family had all expressed their agreement to Lei Qiuxing in different ways. Lei Qiuxing, who had only wanted to give it a try and did not expect to succeed, was also slightly stunned. But very quickly, he smiled and read through the memorials and agreed to the northern frontier's small request. "Zhang Xiu, who do you think is behind this?" Lei Qiuxing put down the memorials in his hands and let out a long breath. He smiled and asked. Zhang Xiu put his hands behind his back and his face, which was fairer than a woman's, did not show the slightest emotion. He just lowered his head and silently wiped the bloodstains on his hands. Without raising his head, he said, "Your Majesty, once the northern frontier's problem is solved, no matter how bold the southern and central clans are, they would not dare to imitate the northern frontier's actions. But, this problem is solved. Don't you want to solve our current problem?" Although Zhang Xiu's expression did not change when he spoke, Lei Qiuxing could still hear a hint of helplessness in Zhang Xiu's tone. He could not help but laugh heartily. "Ah, trouble? What trouble? Isn't it just a group of hopping grasshoppers after autumn? Without the support of the Hengduan mountain range, how many days can the Jiao clan last? Solving the northern frontier's problem is our current problem. Now that the problem has been solved, I am naturally happy. At this point, the smile on Lei Qiuxing's face gradually disappeared. He said in a deep voice, if the Jiao clan wants to continue existing in the Shenwu dynasty, the biggest problem that needs to be solved is to re-establish contact with the Hengduan mountain range and urgently mobilize a batch of resources to replenish themselves. The Black Snake and its Demon Emperor Association hate the Jiao clan the most. Next, we just have to watch the internal strife between our two great enemies. Zhang Xiu's mouth also curved into a smile. The Jiao clan that had been entangled with the embroidered uniform guard for many years would soon vanish. He was naturally the happiest. In addition, other than the Jiao clan, he also found the Black Snake an interesting prey. Even if the Jiao clan was uprooted, he did not have to worry about being bored in the future. In fact, compared to knowing the Jiao clans. However, you should also hurry up with the Black Snake's matter. The smile on Lei Qiuxing's face completely disappeared. He once again resumed the appearance of a cold monarch. He said in a deep voice, as long as this demon emperor is not dug out, it will be like a thorn in my heart. You can directly kill the Black Snake. If there is really a demon emperor behind the scenes, it will naturally appear or throw out a new smoke bomb. If there is no demon emperor, then get rid of the Black Snake as soon as possible so that I can sleep soundly and not spend every day in anxiety. Your Majesty, I know what to do about the Black Snake's matter. Zhang Xiu bowed slightly and rejected Lei Qiuxing's suggestion that would ruin his fun. He tilted his head and said, Your Majesty, you should pay more attention to the Qingpeng king now, shouldn't you? Chapter 298. Unexpectedly, the northern frontier chose to accept the title of king, causing a lot of people to be dissatisfied. At the same time, it also caused most of the restless forces to once again seize their banners and seize their drums. They no longer dared to challenge the prestige of the Shenwu dynasty. After all, at this time, if anyone wanted to become the second northern frontier, it was possible that not only the Xiongwu army would be mobilized. Based on the temperament of the Shenwu emperor, if you dared to make things difficult for him, he would dare to drag you down with him. Time passed bit by bit. Lin Yuan, who chose to keep the peace, did not continue the plan of sealing off the Shenwu dynasty's spiritual items. Of course, when the spiritual items of the Hengduan Mountains passed through the northern frontier, the price would still be 30% higher than the original price. However, this was already a very satisfactory price. It was much better than the previous exorbitant price of spiritual items. Even cultivators from ordinary families could grit their teeth and buy some spiritual items to assist their cultivation. Another month passed by. The progress bar of Lin Yuan's transformation into a flood dragon successfully reached 99.9% and then it stopped moving. Lin Yuan was almost used to the way the system cheated him. Based on the current situation, if he wanted to completely transform into a flood dragon, he would have to do some special mission to push the last 0.1% of the progress bar. However, this mission was not directly released by the system. It should have some trigger conditions. Ever since the progress bar was stuck 3 days ago, Lin Yuan had been staying in Shunning City thinking about what the trigger conditions for this Flood Dragon transformation mission were. What did he have to find, where did he have to go, or who did he have to meet? However, the system was not willing to give any hint. In any case, it would not do anything related to humans. However, to be honest, although the system had done many immoral things, this was the first time it had done something so confusing. After all, it was normal for this kind of mission to not have a clear direction. However, if it did not even give a clue, then it was a bit too much. The Mountain Lord realm is indeed not that easy to enter. Lin Yuan faintly sighed. As a cheater with a system all along, as long as he had enough attribute points, he would not need to be stuck at a bottleneck like other monsters or cultivators. But now, a bottleneck had indeed not appeared, but the system's mission was definitely more terrifying than a bottleneck. Although both required luck, the former at least gave him a direction, right? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan simply emptied his mind and began to think about some nonsense. Soon Lin Yuan realized something. There was a clear boundary between realms in this world. The desolate demon realm, void underworld realm and above seemed to be bound by an invisible rule. They would almost never participate in any disputes between those of a lower realm, and they were usually in a state of seclusion. Strictly speaking, the number of such cultivators was not small. For example, the northern frontier had the former guardian of the northern frontier, Yan Xingqi, and Master Qin of the Freedom Courtyard. Perhaps there were some powerhouses that Lin Yuan had never seen before. However, just one of them had at least 2 void underworld realm cultivators. How many of such existences were there in the entire Jianghu continent? But what was strange was that in the 7 empires that were nominally at the top, the kings were generally in the airborne realm. It could even be said that heavenly strength realm kings like Jiu Xinghai and Lei Qiuxing were rare. As for kings above the heavenly strength realm, there had not been a single one since ancient times. This seemed to be some kind of rule? Who was the person who made the rules and why did they make such rules? Ding, 3,500 meters to the west, a River Lord realm monster is approaching. Host, please be careful to avoid it. The system's notification sounded in Lin Yuan's ears, and it was as calm as ever. River Lord realm? Lin Yuan was slightly taken aback at first, but he quickly realized that this was probably another name for Mountain Lord realm monsters. Monsters on land were called Mountain Lords, and aquatic monsters were called River Lords? Lin Yuan had no intention of avoiding it at this moment. After all, the other party was only 1 realm higher than him. Even if he wasn't a match for it after activating the blood boil technique, escaping wouldn't be much of a problem. At this moment, Lin Yuan was thinking about whether he should be called a mountain lord or a river lord if he broke through again. After all, water snakes were amphibious creatures. Was he supposed to call them mountain and river lords? Turtle, that was a bit domineering. Before Lin Yuan could recover from his blank state of mind, the River Lord realm monster in the system's notification had already appeared in front of Lin Yuan. The moment the other party appeared, Lin Yuan had already regained consciousness. Although he didn't want to admit it, Lin Yuan couldn't help but be on high alert. Although he didn't know what level this guy in front of him was at the River Lord realm, the pressure he gave off wasn't inferior in the slightest to Yan Xingqi, Master Qin, and other void realm cultivators. The old, weak, sick and disabled people he had seen in Sumeru world couldn't compare at all. Black Snake, we meet again. The other party's figure was still flickering. Evidently it was still moving at high speed, but it stopped steadily in front of Lin Yuan. This mysterious action caused Lin Yuan's eyes to narrow slightly. He began to think carefully. When had he ever seen a River Lord realm monster like this? After all, he had been reborn in this world for less than a year. Although he had experienced many things, he hadn't forgotten a single thing that was worth remembering. In addition, Lin Yuan didn't think that he had the right to look down on a River Lord realm monster. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remember this unremarkable monster. When the River Lord realm monster saw Lin Yuan's expression, it immediately knew that Lin Yuan hadn't guessed who it was. A moment later, it stopped and squinted its eyes. Other than me, have you seen other demonic beasts of the Dragon Clan? As the other party stabilized itself, Lin Yuan quickly recalled that when he was still a Spirit Awakening realm monster, he had seen this River Lord realm monster. However, at that time, the system hadn't scanned its level. Now that Lin Yuan was strong enough, the system directly called it a River Lord realm monster. If Lin Yuan could improve further, the system would even be able to scan the other party's strength. Senior Ao Qian of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Lin Yuan lowered his head slightly to show his respect. Under the law of the jungle, the strong should always be respected. Ao Qian nodded slightly to show that she was very satisfied that the Black Snake could still remember her. After all, a Spirit Awakening realm monster's intelligence wasn't much better than that of an ordinary wild beast. Back then, it was already good enough that the Black Snake could communicate with her normally. As for being able to clearly remember what happened back then, it didn't have any expectations. Chapter 299. Very good, Black Snake. You really didn't disappoint me. No wonder you have the blood of the Dragon Clan in your body. Ao Qian smiled and said in a deep voice, I can feel that the blood in your body is very pure. It is gradually transforming your body, allowing you to be one step closer to the noble Dragon Clan. But now there is a small accident. You are still unable to take the last step, right? Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes lit up. He had been thinking about why he had no clue about this special mission. But now it seemed that although this mission needed to be triggered, Lin Yuan didn't need to find it himself. As long as the time was right, the other party would send itself to him. Dog system, Daddy has wronged you. You have done something good this time. Please enlighten me, Senior. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and tried to calm his excited mood. But when he spoke, his voice was still trembling. The smile in Ao Qian's eyes deepened, but she didn't explain directly. Instead she asked, "Black Snake, do you know what the blood of the monster clan means to the monster clan?" Lin Yuan didn't speak. After all, he didn't know anything about the power of the blood. After all, this kind of question, if it was in his previous life, would belong to the problem of genetics. Since ancient times, those who could achieve something in this field were undoubtedly the elites of the elites. They belonged to the type who lived in this world, and the rest were just there to make up the numbers. Before Lin Yuan was reborn in this world, it was said that the direction of genetics research had already begun to break through to immortality. Yes, to the ancient people, immortality could only be achieved by gods. In the eyes of geneticists, it was completely possible to achieve through scientific means. Even if the technology was not mature, it was still possible to modify some genes and make humans immune to some diseases. But to put this problem on Lin Yuan, it was too difficult for him. Whether it was before or after the blood feud, the field he dabbled in had nothing to do with genetics. Demonic beasts are generally categorized into one big group by human beings. However, internally, demonic beasts are divided into three big groups: the sky, the land, and the sea. These three big groups are further divided into different small groups. However, it is indisputable that these three groups have their own leaders. For example, the Phoenix of the Sky group, the Dragon of the Sea group, and the Kirin of the Land group. The bloodline determined a demonic beast's appearance, innate talent, aptitude, and ability. A dragon race cub that didn't die prematurely could easily reach the level of a river master after entering the growth stage. Moreover, the innate talent and ability it awakened was far from what other races could compare to. However, for an ordinary demonic beast, even if it died of old age, whether it could become a river lord depended on its own luck. Reaching a higher cultivation level was even an extravagant hope. Thus, the power of a demonic beast's bloodline also determined the upper limit of a demonic beast's growth. Black Snake, among the countless monsters, you are undoubtedly one of the luckiest ones. This is because you were born with the bloodline of the dragon clan in your body, and the concentration is not low. Therefore, your growth speed is very amazing in the eyes of outsiders, but in our dragon clan, it is considered normal because all of this is given to you by your dragon clan bloodline. Seeing that Lin Yuan didn't speak, Ao Qian directly started to bluff him. Lin Yuan nodded his head cooperatively and sneered in his heart. In less than a year, from a wild beast to the peak of the wisdom realm, if this speed was considered normal in the dragon palace of the four seas, then the system wouldn't say that there were only a few true dragons in the dragon palace of the four seas. He had already guessed what Ao Qian was up to. She wanted to use this opportunity to beat him up, and at the same time recruit him under the dragon palace of the four seas. After all, if it was Lin Yuan who did it himself, he wouldn't let go of a newly born genius who could stir up a storm in the Sky Martial continent and not be used by the dragon palace of the four seas. Faintly, Lin Yuan even felt a trace of danger. After all, if it was him who did this, he would first get familiar with the other party, and then throw out a certain amount of benefits to tempt the other party. If the other party was still stubborn, then Lin Yuan could only carry out the backup plan with the idea of destroying the other party if he couldn't get the other party. After thinking through this point, Lin Yuan's sense of danger became even more intense. Black Snake, the power of the bloodline in your body has stopped transforming, and it's not your problem. Almost all of us dragon bloodline demonic beasts have similar problems. This is also one of the reasons why the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was first established. We want to help all the dragon bloodline demonic beasts break the shackles of their own bloodline, and step into a new realm. It's like this. Although you have the bloodline of the dragon clan, you may not be recognized by the bloodline of the dragon clan. Only when you are recognized by the power of your own bloodline can the bloodline continue to transform. Regarding this point, all the forces established by the dragon bloodline demonic beasts have studied, but the success rate is generally not high. Only our Dragon Palace of the Four Seas has a success rate of almost 70%. This is also one of the reasons why we can become the strongest among all the dragon bloodline demonic beasts. However, it's not easy to help the dragon bloodline demonic beasts to be recognized by the power of the bloodline. Even we have to pay a great price, so we can't provide such a service for the dragon bloodline demonic beasts for free. We're just willing to give you a chance. We're old acquaintances. As long as you're willing to join the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, I'll personally pay the cost of awakening the bloodline for you. How about that? Ao Qian did not notice Lin Yuan's strange look and continued to speak. What she said was partly true and partly false. After all, there were many forces established by the dragon bloodline demonic beasts, and the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was not necessarily the strongest. However, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas did not accept demonic beasts with other bloodlines at all. Even a genius without the dragon bloodline was not qualified to join the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. As for those with the dragon bloodline, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas would not care about their prospects at all, and would directly send people to invite them. As for helping the dragon bloodline demonic beasts to be recognized by the power of the bloodline, it was possible that the dragon bloodline demonic beasts had indeed summed up a set of methods, but the cost might not be very high. Moreover, since there was a failure rate, the success rate of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas was definitely less than 70%. This was what Lin Yuan could be sure that Ao Qian was lying about. After all, whether it was a human or a demonic beast, the eyes were the windows to the soul. Once there was any fluctuation in the heart, the eyes would follow. When she said this, Lin Yuan could clearly see that Ao Qian's eyes were flickering. Obviously, she was guilty, like a child who had secretly done something bad. Therefore, Lin Yuan could also see that this was probably the first time she had deceived a demonic beast. Chapter 300. After all, Ao Qian had once invited the Black Serpent on behalf of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. However, at that time, the Black Serpent was just an awakened beast. Although it had the dragon bloodline, its future potential was hard to predict. Therefore, Ao Qian had only casually mentioned it. However, the Black Serpent was no longer the same as before. Just its growth speed alone was enough to crush all the young talents of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. From a beast to the peak of the wisdom state in less than a year, what kind of concept was that? Anyway, as a young genius of the dragon race, when Ao Qian heard this news, her first reaction was that someone was telling her a story. However, after confirming it repeatedly, she realized that it was true. Moreover, the main character was the Black Serpent she had seen before. In addition, other than its own strength and growth speed, the Black Serpent's subordinates were also extraordinary. Although the land beasts under the Black Serpent's command were of no value to the sea beasts, the Black Serpent now controlled the northern frontier and almost all the production of spiritual items in the Stoneclaw Forest. Even if the sea beasts did not need those, they could still bring in huge profits. The value of the Black Serpent now was completely different from the Black Serpent before. Lin Yuan narrowed his heterochromatic eyes and sized up Ao Qian for a moment. He said in a deep voice, "Senior, I need to consider this matter. After all, I am still the Beast King of the Hengduan Mountain Range, am I not?" Considering that if he directly rejected it, he might trigger Ao Qian's killing intent. Therefore Lin Yuan chose to be steady. For the current him, he was surrounded by powerful enemies. Only when his strength was truly strong would he be able to accept the test. However, to give up on himself and become a lackey of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in order to obtain the bloodline power's recognition was not an option that Lin Yuan would choose. Moreover, the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas could not guarantee that he could successfully awaken his bloodline. Therefore Lin Yuan needed time. If he could obtain the bloodline power's recognition, his strength would be able to smoothly enter the Mountain Lord realm. At that time, even if Ao Qian wanted to kill him, he would still be able to fight back. If he waited until Ao Qian ran out of patience and still did not awaken his bloodline power, Lin Yuan could only throw away his old face and rush into the depths of the Hengduan Mountain Range to seek protection from the Beast King court. He did not believe that Ao Qian would dare to pursue him. Ever since he met with Kirin, the Hengduan Mountain Range, the Beast King had entered a bloody period. Beast King Kirin, the Hengduan Mountain Range, killed many of the other factions hidden in the mountains. Even the Inferno Hell Demon's subordinates, that of the lords who had been hiding, who was who of the Purgatory Beast King. Of Beast King of Avavs. Even Raymond, Keiho, and Subaru, the three great Beast Kings, were currently being investigated. One could vaguely see that the Beast King Kirin had set up a large net. People like Lin Yuan who had hidden things that other demon beasts would not see the light of day were actually safe. However, Beast King Kirin would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. The Hengduan Mountain Range during this period was extremely bloody and violent. If it was not necessary, Lin Yuan did not want to enter. If a foreign dragon bloodline demon beast entered the Hengduan Mountain Range, it would probably be torn to pieces in a matter of minutes. Ao Qian's eyes flashed with joy. She nodded with a smile and said, "It's fine. Take your time to think about it. Once you've handed over the matters at hand, follow me back to the Western Sea Dragon Palace. I will ask for instructions from the higher-ups and give you the best resources to awaken your bloodline." Lin Yuan still smiled and nodded. He still did not speak. Only after obtaining the bloodline's recognition could one become a true flood dragon? Then what was the recognition of the flood dragon bloodline? Lin Yuan thought carefully for a moment. Suddenly, his heterochromatic eyes lit up. In his previous life, there were two types of flood dragons. One type lived in seclusion deep in the mountains and forests and did not come out. They only focused on cultivation and might often hide in the cold ponds deep in the mountains. The other type of flood dragon was different. They liked to come out and cultivate. In the ancient legends of his previous life, there were often monsters that controlled rivers and lakes. Most of them were aquatic monsters, but there was no lack of flood dragons. After all, there were too many mysteries in the sea. The strength of a flood dragon was not enough to roam freely. However, in his previous life, besides the mythical dragon king of the four seas, most of the people referred to flood dragons in the rivers, lakes, and seas. Could it be that if I want to obtain the recognition of the flood dragon bloodline, I have to choose one of these two cultivation methods? Lin Yuan gently shook the snake's head. His eyes gradually deepened. Come out or enter the world. Although it wasn't clear how the dragon bloodline demonic beasts of this world obtained the recognition of their bloodline, the difficulty was undoubtedly very high. For example, among Subaru's descendants, not to mention the three-eyed sacred heart ape, even the three-eyed sacred heart ape could be counted on one's fingers. As for whether or not the bloodline above Subaru would be the inheritance of some incomparably terrifying ancient creature, no one knew. In any case, among the apes of the Hengduan mountain range, Subaru's bloodline was the noblest and strongest. As for Lin Yuan, with the assistance of the system, it was hard to say how far his bloodline could evolve. However, if the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas really existed, it meant that the legends of his previous life were not groundless. Then, the strongest dragon that Lin Yuan knew of would be the ancestral dragon that was born after the creation of the world by Pangu. Lin Yuan did not know if he could evolve to the level of the ancestral dragon. However, Lin Yuan was sure that his upper limit was definitely not a mere water flood dragon. Then let's try to enter the world and cultivate. Lin Yuan recovered from his thoughts. Ao Qian was already nowhere to be found. Obviously, she was very satisfied with Lin Yuan's answer and wanted to give Lin Yuan enough time and trust. Therefore, when Lin Yuan was thinking, she had already quietly left. Lin Yuan, were all River Lord level demonic beasts so easily deceived? After fighting with humans and some old monsters hiding in the Hengduan mountain range for a long time, Lin Yuan's first reaction was that he was not used to seeing a fellow with a different style. However, after thinking about it, as a River Lord level demonic beast, it was hunting down a wisdom perception dove serpent. Even the task of roping in Lin Yuan had fallen on its head. Almost all of them were easy and highly paid people. Although Ao Qian did not mention it, her position in the Dragon Palace of the West Sea was definitely not low. For such an existence, ordinary demonic beasts would not dare to play tricks with it. Even humans would subconsciously avoid it. Only a cheat like Lin Yuan would deceive it. Lightly shaking his head, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. He wriggled his snake body and walked towards the City Lord Mansion of Shining City. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.